changes anymore.
All right, we're now live on the air here. If I could have everyone stand, please. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Claudine, I'll have you open. Well, where's Andy? I'm going to give Andy a second. Oh, he's next to me. I'll open up the Budget Committee meeting by taking a roll call, starting with Mike.
Hi.
Here.
Present, Mike Williams.
Mike Bush, thank you.
Bob Carey.
Peg Hurd.
Larry Brown.
Claudine Burnham.
And Humphrey Williams, so we do have a quorum. And Claudine, you want to open your meeting?
Yeah, we'll open up Board of Selectmen. Yeah,
Yes, Andrew Ross and
and Claudine Burnham.
All right, so we're ready to meet. I want to start off with just a little comment. There's been confusion over this type of meeting here. I know this is the third year we've tried to do the joint meeting, but, and the intent, I want to talk a little bit about the intent. We did talk about it with the Board of Selectmen and that, but I want to make sure the department heads hear this firsthand too. And the idea is not to turn around and try to negotiate any of the department head proposals right now. The idea is for the department heads to do their presentation for questions and answers, okay? So that if we do have questions, please ask. That's not a matter of agreement or disagreement. That's going to be when we go forward to try to determine the budgets in the outlying meetings, okay? So again, and my expectation is we'll have the department heads do their presentation. Let's try to hold the questions till they get an opportunity to go through, and then we'll go back through and ask whatever pertinent questions are necessary. What I hope to do from there is we have our next regular meeting on September 28th, and I know the Board of Selectmen are going to have your regular meetings as well. Anything that we start going through budget-wise, I want to make sure that we communicate back and forth so that we come up with a mutual budget by the time we're through. I'd really like to try to make sure that we get all questions answered in a timely fashion pretty early in the process so we can try to finish this, the town's budget by November, because we still have the school budget to do as well. So, any questions? All right, without hearing any, Nick, you're up for us. Chief Marie, please present the fire department budget.
Does that work, or can we?
Yes, it does work. Yeah.
All right, I printed out some packets. Does anybody need one? Larry, do you have a? Anybody else? All right. So this PowerPoint, basically we'll just go through the changes and the significant points within each line item. At any point, just stop me, interrupt me, ask me questions, and we'll try to get through as quickly as we can. My favorite little cartoon. Just another chart that I've put together over the years that you guys have seen. Basically, the full cost of the fire department services and the budget is on the far left column. So as you can see, there is an increase that I'm proposing this year. But other than that, everything's been pretty much the same. And it's actually trended downwards with lease payments maturing over the last several years. So this is the biggest change for this year. The requested amount that I put forward is $178,440. I believe Chris took the new position out, so your amount is something.
I took it out,
Never included. Perfect. I don't know exactly what the number is.
132,294 last year's.
Okay.
Last year's budget.
So if we don't put the new full-time position in that I'm proposing, which I'll talk about in a second, that number is actually still a little bit low. Because if you remember last year, we took 10,000 off the top without any rhyme or reason other than to get the entire town budget low, and that's the line we chose to take it from. So if we don't put the new full-time position in, then we'll have to recalculate that 2022 number to the actual proper amount based on current salaries. So what I did was I put a full-time position starting in July, so it's only half a year. And then it also includes the COLA step increases for the other two full-time employees. One full-time employee was promoted from lieutenant to captain recently, so that salary increase is included in that number. And like I said, the additional full-time employees would start hypothetically in July. So the reason I'm proposing this is one of those things that we've talked about for several years, and I felt this was the most appropriate year to do it. We're covering the station with 2 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now, which is the proper staffing, in my opinion. And the problem is doing it with 2 full-time people and 14 or so part-time people has become a challenge, and it's only going to get worse. So obviously part-time people have full-time jobs. Their full-time jobs take priority. And even with the pool of 14 people, it's difficult to ensure that there's going to be somebody available to work any given day. So this year has been noticeable with increase in overtime costs for the 2 full-time people because they obviously are available to work. And I'm not comfortable going without. Things are just getting busier and busier, and there's less volunteers around on any given day. So to ensure that there's 2 people at the station all the time, this is the staffing that I've chosen. Basically, we've used some COVID money last year to kind of get over the hump and took some of the edge off of it. We got reimbursed 22 once and 30 some odd $1,000 to cover the night shifts, which were previously stipend covered. But again, that was starting to wean off too. People were not interested in doing it for the stipend amount. So we coupled COVID money and we're able to get to the staffing levels we need, and we're covering the costs with the revolving account. But like I've talked about, again, for years, the revolving account has been kind of floating the budget along, keeping it level funded, and that isn't sustainable, and it won't be sustainable in the future. So this extra full-time employee will help the revolving account, help the staffing, and help the future trends of less available part-time people. And it's just one of those things that it's the direction that we need to go. And I've been talking about it publicly for 3 years, and I've seen it coming for probably 6, 7, 8 years. So with that being said, do you have any questions specifically on that?
Mm-hmm.
It's not increasing our staffing level, it's just supplementing it and properly funding it essentially.
Peg?
Yeah, I'm just questioning because last year that salary retention program was approved by the town.
Yep.
So how much of this is actually going to go into the default? And how much is in addition? Just out of total curiosity, because
Yeah.
this is a big jump,
I
but
have, actually, let's go to the packet real quick, the full-time, that full-time section,
okay, page 5?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
So 30,000 is the new hire. So you take 30,000 off
Off
178.
Yep.
So that number should really be
140, yeah, 148.
Okay.
So that would basically show.
Well, I guess I'm asking.
Add 10 grand to the 132 that we cut off the top. So last year I had proposed 142. And then from 142 to 148 would be an increase in the step plan for those 2 full-time employees, roughly.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep,
Does that answer
yep,
your question?
thank you. So some of this is going to be part of the default.
Yeah, it'll adjust,
Yeah,
yeah.
that will
Default should
adjust
be-
that, and it'll adjust the Medicare and Social Security.
Yep.
Default should be 148, so that new full-time position is just the 30,000 for the half year.
Now, I guess maybe further, part-time people were not affected by the salary retention program?
We piecemealed it, so when we did the July increase for the step plan, all like the call and volunteer firefighters that were making $12, $13 an hour that work 20 hours a year, they all went up to the very bottom step on the step plan. So they went up to like 1509, most of them.
Okay.
All the people that work shifts and work 24 hours a week or 48 hours a month or whatever it might be, they just got the 2%, with the exception of a couple that kind of got brought in line with other people so that it was even.
Okay.
So though most of the people were close to being in the step plan, if
Okay.
not already in.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of big costs with the fire department going forward with the step plan.
Okay. Thank you.
What's the head count, full-time and part-time?
2 full-time currently.
Yeah.
The
Entire
entire.
fire department.
Yeah, 2. And then there's 40 people on the roster. So there's, and the 38 remaining people, or 39 depending on any given day, 38, 37, it ranges by a few. But
So 40, 49, and 39? Or
40. Like the roster, I try to keep it right around 40. It might go up a couple, it might go down a couple, but
yeah, okay.
so there's probably 20 people of those 40 that are eligible to work shifts.
Yep.
The rest of them are just on-call volunteers.
Thank you.
And of the 20 that are eligible, there's probably 10 that work 1 shift a week. Roughly, 1 every other week. And there's probably another 7, 8, 9 that work maybe like 1 day a month, or will pick up a shift when there's absolutely nobody around and they're available.
It's gonna be tough to juggle that, huh?
Yeah, it's impossible. Well, the problem is I do the schedule 2 weeks prior. I do the schedule for a month, 2 weeks prior to the beginning of the month. So everybody gives me their days that they're available. So the other day I was doing the schedule, and everybody texts me their days. I write it down on a piece of paper, then I put the calendar up. I fill the full-time people in, then I fill the paramedics in, then I fill the seniority people in. And then I look at what I have left and I start plugging people in. Like, there was 3 days where nobody gave me a single day they could work. It was like the 20th and another random day. And so I had to basically stop making phone calls. Hey, this wasn't available. Can you work this? Or can you work part of this? And it takes me like a full day to track people down, organize it. And then 3 weeks later, oh, I have something going on with, got called into my full-time job. I can't work. Well, I only had nobody to work that day to begin with. Now I gotta find somebody to work. So that's when the overtime starts coming in for the full-time people. Like, hey, can you do this? Because there's nobody around. Which is why, if I had another full-time person, at least I had consistency with those people and more people that are available to come back and fill those open shifts. It's
And-
not
and- and
it's
Nick,
not
to
a
be
want,
clear,
it's kind of
you're-
a need going forward. It's been getting progressively worse. And it's not the pay thing, it's not the desire to work, it's strictly availability.
Just to clarify, your overtime is built into your salary line too.
It's part of that 178.
Got a question?
Yep. Andy?
Okay, thanks. So on any given time, Nick, during any given day of the year, say if you have a call at the fire station, are there any people in town who just drop what they're doing, any on-call or,
Yeah,
just to come to the fire station?
yes,
There is?
yes.
Okay.
There could be 0, there could be 10.
Mhm.
We don't know at any given time. On a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, that's why I think it's so important that we have at least the 2 people at the fire station. So if we have a fire, the fire truck goes. And if we have a medical call, it guarantees the ambulance is on duty. But everybody works, and nobody works in town anymore.
So the 2 full-time are EMS and fire?
Everybody that works there is EMS and fire. Except for one person. She's only EMS. But
Now, just playing the devil advocate, you know, of course, there's gonna be a question that's gonna be asked. I mean, unfortunately, we're doing a default budget. I mean, you're gonna have to continue doing what you're doing. How you gonna go about that?
Just keep doing it.
Best we can.
Yeah, as best we can.
All right. I mean,
Just,
because, you know, I mean, of course, we all know that, you know, our budget has been $10,000 over what the budget is, and we've had to try to find $10,000 in the past, and you know, this is a quite a big pill to swallow. So I'm just trying to figure out, you know, moving forward, how are we gonna?
trust me, I get it.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that at some point it has to happen. And if we don't start trying to figure it out together now, we can't push it off forever. And I'm just afraid that if we don't get it, or if we don't ask for it, then another year, wait till next year, then that's 18 months. And what's gonna happen between now and whatever, 18 plus months from now, 30 months from now, I can't tell you that. I mean, Chris knows, in the spring, we lost several people to other area full-time departments. And that's the other problem with, we bring all these part-time people in, and I'm very picky who we hire. We don't advertise, we basically recruit people that are local, that we know and trust and we want working for us. But that means they're quality candidates that are getting picked up by other departments.
Mm-hmm.
So you rely on, you know, 2 people that each work a 24-hour shift a week. That's 48 hours. If they leave, you're trying to scramble, and the answer's not more quantity. The answer's not, well, let's have 30 or 20 people available to work, because the problem is they're not, like, with 14, I can guarantee that most people that want to work once a week, I can guarantee them a shift. If I bring anybody in, they're going to want to work. They're not going to want to just be like, oh, sure, I'll be on your roster, you can call me when you need me, because they're going to be at their other part-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's several people that work, 3 or 4 different places.
No, I was
So
just
they're always bouncing around, and that's why.
No,
the
I
availability is
understand. I was just really thinking going down. I mean, I know times are changing, things are changing. I know we did put a special warrant article on for the police department, and I just didn't know if maybe that's the route we should go, and let the towns people, if that's. I mean, because that's another option, is put a special warrant article on to see if that's the way that the town wants to, that's the avenue. I'm just throwing it all out there.
Doesn't matter to me.
Something we'll look into. All right, any other questions dealing with the salary issues? Okay, go ahead, Nick.
So we just talked about this. The volunteer well is pretty much drying up. And it's not a Milton problem. It's a national problem. And it's better in some areas than other areas, but all in all, we're in an okay position. There's definitely towns that touch us that are in a far worse position, but we're still going in that direction just like everybody else is. So this is the part-time salary, there's no change. So it's all the compensation for the call and volunteers that come back. The assistant chief's hours, and last year we put 2 24-hour positions in there to help alleviate the revolving account. And that was a transfer. That was a transfer from that 961 line that was paying the night stipends.
Mm-hmm.
That moved up last year, and that budget's approved. So
Yep.
that's the same now, and that 961 line is gone. That's the elected salary. So 39,362 was last year. 43,42 is this year, and think if you do the math, it's probably like a 3% or a little bit more than 3% because there was a 1% issued in July that wasn't planned for accordingly. And then the next step, well, the first step on the new plan. And it only ended up being just a slight jump to move into the plan, like 2% or 2.02 or something like that. So FICA, obviously based on salary lines, Medicare, based on the salary lines, and there's a $560 increase in that because of the full-time increase, $61 on that, basically just because of the, probably the elected salary line, because the full-time line does not have FICA taken out. So here we have a little bit of a situation where the New Hampshire retirement system jumped substantially. So obviously part of that is that added position for half a year. And the other part of it is the increase from 30.09% to 32.99%. Which, Chris, you don't have this because I caught it last 2 minutes ago. I think originally it was 52 or something like that.
Humphrey called me, we had a,
He made the adjustment, but what we didn't do was, we didn't change it to the 32.99 because he just talked about it, so we'll just have to fix it on the form.
We should have fixed it, so that from 42 to 58 is more of an increase than it should have been, because Chief Grossman and I both missed it last year during this time, and it had just come out a couple months prior to that.
Yeah, he caught his right at the end.
Yeah.
We made some changes right at the end of the year because it came up in July of last year.
And I don't think I changed mine because we took the 10 grand off the top, so the numbers
Yeah.
didn't quite calculate out anyway.
Okay.
Training stays the same. Employee testing stays the same. Uniforms, I don't have the price increase on PPE yet, but I know it's gone up. I was told the other day when we were here it was going up this fall and then again in January. I'm guessing I probably didn't add enough. I don't know exactly what the price increase is, but if we have 6 sets and it goes up $100, that covers it right there. If it goes up more than that, then it doesn't, but we'll just obviously run a deficit. But that's the reason for that $650 increase right there. I found this chart the other day, looking for something else, and just gives you an idea on what a few different things cost. But the air packs were in good shape, portable radios were in good shape, but they're $6,000. $10,000 roughly for a thermal imaging camera. Jaws of Life, $35,000 for a set. Everything's going up. The hoods are $100 now because they have an extra layer in there to prevent the particles from penetrating, whereas before it was just to keep the heat out.
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be $35 for a hood, now they're $100. Contract services, there was some increases and decreases. The details are in the packet. There's nothing substantial. I got rid of the subscriptions for like fire engineering, firehouse, and a couple different magazines that we used to get, because everybody reads on their phone now and nobody reads print. So they were like $35 a piece roughly, and a couple other things went up. The post office box went up about the same, so it all balanced out. Electric, we're looking pretty good, and I just left it the same. Heat, the contract for propane went from $8,400 to $10,260, so I increased the budget accordingly, and that was from propane going from $1.40 to $1.90. The usage in the contract reduced from 6,000 to, I believe, 5,400. But the 50-cent per gallon hike obviously was enough to drive that up substantially. Water, that's domestic water at the station. There might be an extra, I just ran the numbers, the averages last night again, and there might be an extra couple $100 there, but it could fluctuate, so I just assume leave it the same. hydrant fees, nothing's changed there, including the water pressure, it still looks like that coming out.
That color, too?
No, it's brown.
Okay.
Telephones went up $375, and that's because the internet for MetroCast or Atlantic Broadband went from 82 to 114 a month. I don't have a real rhyme or reason why that happened, other than I saw it in the bill. We didn't add any services. I kind of find that ridiculous that it went up that much over the course of a year, but
Saw that one.
Wait a minute, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Question.
yes.
What negotiation does your telephone have with any municipal contract services that the town may enjoy?
Well, I think Chris is working on it. We have the same company for the telephone, and I thought we were working on a collaborated contract for the maintenance agreement, but the lines are it's all on the town's plan. That's just my portion of it.
Ah, okay.
That's through Atlantic Broadband. You're talking about the increase?
Telephone is through
Or is that first, yeah. never mind.
First light.
First light,
yeah,
okay.
that's what it is. Thank
They
you.
change their name every year.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
Atlantic shorthand.
The Atlantic Broadband is just the internet.
The internet,
Verizon is the
yeah.
mobile data.
Yep.
So the mobile data is, each ambulance has an iPad, and we do our online, or our reports for medical calls online. So we go in with an iPad now instead of a pad of paper, and it needs to be connected to get to the state medical database reporting software, and that's what that's for.
Okay.
Public education, and that's any CPR classes or fire prevention stuff at the schools, the little coloring books we give the kids and stuff like that. No change there. Printing stays the same, so we have a copy machine at the station, which is paid for and probably should be replaced soon because usually prints a big line down the middle and it makes all kinds of noises, and the guys are in there fixing it every few months.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I am aware of that, and our copier and the police department's copier are all up at the very end of fiscal year '22. So sometime next year, in '22, we will be rebidding those services. My understanding in talking with the rep already is that he can replace all three with what we're paying now,
Okay.
and get rid of the monthly lease to Lease. So that will probably be forthcoming in 2022.
Okay.
I wanted to wait till we got closer to the end of the contract rather than messing it up now.
Yep, makes sense.
So that $300 fee is, like, because the leaf payment for us is up. But that's like $50 a quarter for any time I need to print something in color and like stationery. So like the other day, we spent $206 on letterhead and envelopes, which is the first time we bought that, and business cards.
Yeah.
It's the first time we bought any of that in probably 2 or 3 years. So it's more than what I had budgeted, but it's not an annual charge.
Okay.
I'd also like to combine, when we have departments that all have the same service provider,
Mm-hmm.
or same service, let's say paper,
Yep.
photocopiers. What I am seeing is that, like on heating systems and cooling systems, we're all paying different rates for what I would consider the same service. Because we all have boilers,
Yep.
we all have heat exchangers, the air systems. I don't understand why they're all different. Well, I do, but I don't.
Yeah.
So I'd rather, in the future, possibly eliminate a printing line for both the PD, the fire, and combine all those departments into one printing line.
Mhm.
And have one contract for both paper and
Service on
printing
it.
services, if
Yeah.
you will, combining our resources so that we're all not, so hopefully we can get a better rate.
Yep.
But I don't see, we can do it with postage, why don't we do it with simple black and white and colored photocopies?
Yep.
That would be my direction in the future.
No, makes sense.
So supplies hasn't changed, that's been the same, actually reduced it a year or two ago, from 45 to 35, but office supplies, cleaning supplies, paper, and then firefighting supplies too, like the foam and speed dry and fire line tape, or anything like that. Vehicle fuel, that's still trending all right. I think we're probably just driving less, to be honest with you. So that number should work despite the increase in fuel costs over the last couple of years.
Do you know what it was since this year? I mean, in this current year, I mean, I know what it's up 50% as far as regular fuel costs.
What I'm at?
Yeah, I don't know what no, not what your budget is. Do you know what the increase was with the WEX fuel
No.
cost? No?
I don't. I
That's-
didn't notice an increase. I mean, I'm sure there's a price increase, but like I didn't notice. I don't know if our
Yeah.
usage went up and the price went up, so it kind of balanced out. It's trending. Actually, I did it the other. It was last year. It was an average of 176 a month. This year, I did an average of 150 a month or something like that. So it was
Yeah.
actually less per month.
I think we're gonna, Chris, that's one I think we're gonna need because that's gonna affect both fire and public works. You know, we're gonna have to account for that somehow. I'm not looking to change the numbers right now, but we need to be looking at it.
Fuel, your
The diesel fuel in particular, I know that's gone up quite a bit, but regular fuel costs have gone up across the board, so.
Diesel fuel costs, and again, we reduced it from 6 to 47.50 a year or two ago, and I don't even think I'm at 50% year to date right now.
No.
So,
But again, if you have fewer calls and you get more calls next year,
Right.
that's gonna be the dependent part. Okay,
and I don't know if it's because, so one thing, for several years, the ambulance fuel was charged to this line, and then in an effort again to keep that for several years zero funded, we took the ambulance fuel, we started charging it to the revolving account. But I don't know if it's because we get a call, we're sending just a duty patrol with one truck instead of maybe 2 trucks 2-3 years ago,
yep,
and that adds up over time,
Huh.
so it could be that. Building maintenance, we're gonna leave that at 3,000, that pays for a lot of the service stuff in the building, like the PM. So the sprinkler system needs to be inspected annually, the final vent, which is the exhaust system, needs to be, needs a PM annually. The generator maintenance is in, my budget, and we just spent $1,500 on a new alternator and subsequent parts that go along with that, which got charged to this line.
Okay.
Garage door, anytime something happens to the garage door, we usually just take care of it. But the boilers and HVAC is all in public buildings. So here's my other increase, which I know we've talked about it quite a bit with this group, and I don't think we need to, there's no new people here, so. Humphrey's a big, tracker of expenses annually, and I'm sure he knows just as well as I do that this line hasn't been on track for as far back as I can remember. So I felt this was the year to add the increase that we need to cover the annual maintenance of the vehicles, so we went from 14 to 20. Any questions on that, or is it pretty self-explanatory? Why
How many
I did that?
vehicles altogether now?
Oh,
I see 7, but I think there's 8, isn't there?
Well, is there 7 there, and then the pickup,
Pickup,
the
right.
Tahoe, and engine 4 in Milton Mills, so there's 3 more than that. Is that 10? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, 10 vehicles, you know, three or 4 of these are older pieces. You gotta really think about it. $20,000 to maintain all that heavy equipment really isn't that much money.
Yeah, and
If you know what you do,
right.
you know.
And you take $1,200 right off the top for pump testing, that's done every year. $1,000 off the top for the ladder testing. So that was really only leaving me with 12 for actual maintenance. The Tahoe, it went to get an inspection last week. It needs an exhaust. That was at $1,000 and $900 and something dollars. And it's the new, like, so the old ambulance is out of service right now for waiting on parts. It'll be 8 weeks. The condenser the AC condenser that's under the truck behind the cab there is leaking and needs to be replaced. And I called the factory and they said they can get it in 8 weeks. So the truck's been out of service because of the weather, but now that it's cooler at night and in the morning we put everything back on it and we're using it again. But I don't remember what the quote was, a couple grand at least, I'd say. So we're already at 18. You had 2 or 3 for that, plus the $1,000. There's another $4,000 in pending repairs, and it's only September, so I'll be at 22. Engine 2, Wade said he's gonna need tires. It'll probably wait till next year, but that's another $2 grand. It just keeps going, and it's not just the new trucks. I mean, I don't know if I put it in the packet this year because I was running short on time, but I have the breakdown of costs per truck, and it's not. See if I can pull it up real quick. No, it's on my computer. But anyway.
No, I understand, and I just was throwing that out there, that's all.
Hang on one second. Chris has got a question too.
So Nick and I met earlier, it's not so much a question as a
Comment, yeah.
In a, if you will, point of discussion, and I don't have the answer. We sat earlier this year and discussed the revolving fund and the wording of the revolving fund and what it says in the fund and how it's being utilized. And the last 3 words, and kept in service. And I think the chief has, for the last 8 years, with acquiescence from others, interpreted that wording to mean staffing. If I were to have a conversation with any of you at the dinner table, and we said the word, we're talking about our trucks and our personal vehicles, and we said the word service, I think most rational people would go to keeping your vehicle serviced, if you will. Tires, air conditioning units, maintenance. So if the revolving fund was set up to replace these vehicles and maintain these vehicles, why isn't service just handled through that revolving line? With, and it's been set up that the money comes in and there's sufficient capital in that fund that, these requests would be put in writing, run back to the board. And because the board, the selectmen are the trustees of that particular fund. And those funding requests would be approved, i.e. for a new condenser, for, let's say, a full set of tires, because his tires are not cheap. They're not VIP Auto $100 tires. They're huge truck tires at $400 a piece. So a full set of tires is costly. So service is one of those things, kind of like life safety. We get the fire extinguishers serviced, maintained. We get the AEDs maintained because they are a life safety issue. Service for his vehicles is a life safety issue to those driving them, working on them, being carried to the hospital in them, and protected by them. So, as a point of discussion, I think we need, as a group, to have a discussion about how we're using the revolving fund and how it particularly pertains to like you said, Andy, it's really not, 20,000 is not a big number when you consider it spread over 10 vehicles, 10 expensive vehicles. but I think we do need to have a discussion about it, period.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bob?
that revolving fund was set up a long time ago when I first got on board. It was set up to buy a new ambulance. And every year Nick has to put so much away for that only. And I believe in 2013 was the last time it was in the budget. And then if you put it in the revolving fund, everything that comes in there, whatever fees that you get, all go to buy equipment, all to staff that, not staff it, but buy whatever is needed for that ambulance, except for the EMT. It didn't cover their salaries, but if you remember right, we used to be able to check on that. You had to save at the time 15%, and then we just put the ambulance. Now, what you are dependent on is that people pay the bills. And I don't, now that we brought this up, how is the bills coming in? At one time, you were having a hard time getting money, people paying it, or insurance, whatever.
Yeah.
You charge them, how is it going? I mean, you did change collection agency.
Yeah. So it's hard, I don't have the exact percentages, but ambulance collection rates typically are around 50 to 60%, and we're right where the industry standard is. Historically, I haven't looked in the last year or so, but it hasn't deviated from that really. What I can tell you is when we switch collection agencies, I get checks on a fairly regular basis from the new collection agency, whereas the old one, I almost got nothing. So I can get back to you on that. But trending wise for annual income, we peaked at 240, we dropped off last year, and we're trending below that again this year.
See, you are dependent on that for your ambulance. If you would stretch it to the vehicles, you're really gonna have to bring in some money to do this.
Well,
Unless, let me ask, Chris. Would you take money out of that maintenance line, all of it, or just some of it?
Well, we have to be clear. Andy just said, very good Freudian, but the fire chief just said.
wait.
Sorry about that. 240. 240 is what the account balance, the highest the balance has been. I don't think you bring in 240,000.
No, we did. We brought 240,000 in 1 year. But we spent that amount of money too.
But the ambulance cost is what, the new one?
235.
Okay. So, our discussions have gone along that line. There's a certain amount, core amount, that he maintains in that, or has tried to maintain in that account, so that when and if the new ambulance needs to be ordered, it at least can be ordered. And that, and a significant portion of it paid for. But certainly this 20,000 in vehicle maintenance isn't gonna turn the fund upside down or whatever.
Okay, what it is, he's using it now to cover some of the
He's
costs.
using it actually now partially for salaries.
Yeah, so you're stretching this a bit.
Oh, it's stretched beyond its limit. That's what I've been trying to tell you for
Well-
3, 4, 5 years now.
If I could for a moment, I think what's happening here, and Larry, I'm gonna get to you in a moment, is we're kind of negotiating this rather than, I agree, I think we need further discussion.
I only wanted to make.
Oh, no, I appreciate you,
argument on
I
that.
no, I know that,
Talk
Bob. I appreciate your point, I'm just saying we gotta make sure we don't get into the negotiating. And Larry's got a comment, a question too, so.
Then, what I'm hearing, just for a statement of the issue,
Yeah.
it is misplaced costs, rising costs, which cannot be negotiated. The locus of control for who controls the payments, either the board or the fire department. And are we being stiffed? And is that a necessary part of a good PR community support?
Okay.
Those are the issues.
Yep. No, and like I said, and Bob, I appreciate the comments. I just want to make sure we focus on
Yeah.
the comments, but let's not negotiate how we're going to do it yet. That's all, in the interest of time and that. But are there any other comments on that, Bob? Do you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to give another, what it
Nope.
was when I was here.
I appreciate that,
Now,
and I
any
do.
changes need to be made. My concern was the revolving fund, he's using it for more than what
Yeah.
he intended it for.
Initially.
Trying to do the best he can with what he's got for a budget.
But I think in regards to that, because Chris brought that up, the in-service part is trying to make sure that we maintain the
I think
fire
the-
department and ambulance service to the town, so.
I agree.
Right, I
Yeah.
think the exact wording is cost associated with operating, not in service,
Okay.
operating the ambulance.
Okay.
So I took that operating back before anybody, there was a different group of selectmen, and asked if we could do staffing, because if we can't staff the ambulance, we can't operate the ambulance.
Yep.
And then that was approved, and then with all the budgets being asked to be level funded, obviously, services weren't staying the same, costs were rising. So we took everything that we possibly could, including the need for increased staffing, the, fuel, like I said a few minutes ago, that, to bring that $6,000 line to 4,700, because that's how many, how close things were getting. We put that to the wrong account. Everything over the last 5 or 6 years to maintain the budget level has been just pushed off to the revolving account. And now the revolving account, in all honesty, is not supporting everything that we've pushed to it.
Okay.
So that's why I'm trying to get the staffing back to the budget.
Larry.
To switch the conversation ever so slightly, if you have watched Downton Abbey, Carson and Mrs. Hughes were operating costs.
Okay. Let's, Chris?
My whole, I agree with what the chief's done. He is correct in his presentation that prior boards have acquiesced to this. One very statement that I find very comical in this, that's used within government, is that we're gonna put together an accurate budget. I agree. It's hard to do a quote-unquote accurate budget when it accurately doesn't represent how resources are being utilized. Period.
Okay, anything else? Nick, want to continue?
So that's the amount spent to date. 2019, I swear that number was bigger, but that's the number I had in my sheet, so let me just put that in there.
You're correct in operation.
Operate, all right. Equipment maintenance, so that's a lot of PM stuff, and anything goes wrong with the small hand tools and small engines and that type of stuff. That's pretty much been spot on for the last several years, unless some fluke comes up that costs a couple $1,000s. And equipment purchase, so that's been maintained at 16.5 because it was 11 and change. We had to replace all the 4-inch hose, so we added $4,000 to that, which ended up being a 4-year cycle to replace all the hose. That's done. So now we're going to continue to replace all the attack hose, which still is out of date, but we'll do a portion every year for the next several years. I need to replace the high pressure airbags. I got a quote for that the other day. That's $4,000. They've been out of service for about a year because they were out of date. And one of the things I'd like to try to do, it might end up being a CIP thing, or I might try to find money in a future budget, but we have battery powered jaws of life now, and back to the manpower shortage, I'd like to put a battery powered jaws of life in the ambulance, so when the 2 people on duty go out for a car accident, at least they have the ability to make access to a patient that might be trapped in a vehicle. That was never a practical thing in the past. One, because there was more manpower around.
Size of it and everything.
Yeah, the size of it, and it had an engine, hoses, and everything else. Now that it's just a single contained unit, you can easily put it in the ambulance, and they can have a patient extricated before any call, volunteers, or mutual aid shows up to a car accident. If it's not significant, but like a door might be jammed or something like that.
And that'd be a perfect, take right out of the revolving account. I mean, you're gonna put, huh?
There's not $10,000 in the revolving account to do that. We just talked about not having enough money in the revolving account.
But you're gonna put that in the ambulance, and that's what the revolving account is for. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, technically you probably could, but I'm telling you, there's not enough money in the revolving account to do that, because we need to, like Bob said, save for an ambulance. We're doing staffing, we're paying staffing, and it's already overspending what we're
Okay.
bringing in every year, especially where it's already, like I said, this year, we peaked at 240, then we came down, and we're gonna be down again this year. But the expenses continue to go up, so it's not working that way.
Okay.
But yes, technically, we probably could legally do that.
Potential grants.
There's not a lot out there. But I'm always looking. So that's the unit I'm talking about there in the middle. The airbags are on the right. And this year, out of the equipment line, in collaboration with the Public Safety Association, we bought the mechanical CPR device, which we've used several times now. So that was $8,000 split 50-50 with the Public Safety Association. At some point in the future, we'll probably end up buying another one for the second ambulance. Right now, we just move it back and forth for whatever truck's in service, or whatever truck is running first.
Okay. Nick?
Yes.
I just have a really quick question, because looking at everything that you would like to purchase,
Yep.
that I'm assuming not just like, but need,
Yep.
comes up to 32.5, and
Yep.
yet you're only requesting 16.5.
Correct.
You said you're gonna spread it out
I gotta
over
prioritize it.
a few years.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. I could ask for another $10,000. You can get there quicker, but
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, because,
but it's always been like that, Peg. It's
no, I
like,
know it always
like,
has been, but I'm just
I should have replaced all that
thinking,
hose in 1 year, but we just piecemealed it over years. And
Yeah.
I should have replaced the hose that we have now, some of it 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it still works.
I know, but I remember about the hose. You know, maybe two cycles ago, I can't remember when now, but it just seems as though you're always needing to replace equipment, and yet your budget is always less, or your request is always less than what you really need. And I just have a problem with that, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I try to pick one thing, like the vehicle maintenance thing we should have addressed 3 or 4 years ago. But back to why everything got squeezed to the revolving account, we've been under strict direction to level fund the budget every year, which is fine, I don't disagree with that, but there's consequences to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is another, well, that was another line that should probably be closer to 20,000, and maybe next year, or if you guys want this year, we can work on that, but my priority has been, or my priority now is making sure we have people at the station that can respond to the calls, because it doesn't do any good to have equipment if we can't go. And then try to address the maintenance thing, because that issue doesn't seem to be going away.
Okay, just, my comments, my
Yep.
observations, my scaredness. Scaredness?
Scaredness.
I love making up words.
Mike?
So a budgetary question towards this, Nick, and following up with Peg's question. Let's say a particularly bad year. I mean, if you need a battery for the jaws of life, seems pretty important to me.
Yep.
And I appreciate the fact that the people in Milton trying to stretch this out. What happens if you have a particularly bad year and you go over the 16.5? Where would the rest of that money come from? I don't know what the
Well,
answer.
no, so, again, same thing with prioritizing, so there's, 20,000 in uniform line?
Yeah.
I usually buy a set or two at the beginning of the year, and then wait through the year to see how the budget's going, and then buy 3 sets. I just bought 4 to 3 sets the other day, and I have 2 more sets in the budget. Yeah, I think I have 1 or 2 more sets, so that I'll order right at the very end of the year.
So you just have another
So
line.
my gear that's a big number, 20,000. It's one of the biggest lines we have besides staffing. If I don't buy gear this year or next year, okay, there's other priorities. But if I don't have that 20,000 and go 5 years without buying gear, then we're in trouble. So the gear is one of the places I kind of hold back and use it if there's something maintenance-wise. equipment purchase wise that we need. And then we've, not currently, but if we lose a person, by the time we hire, that builds up a little bit of extra money. So salaries might probably have trended under, and that salary from vacant positions over a month or two or three has kind of compensated for some of the vehicle maintenance overage. And then the other one is training. If there's not a bunch of people going to training, then that's another big number, the $6,800 there. That can kind of slide and cover it, but again, I'm not comfortable cutting it. But I'm comfortable not spending it if I don't need to.
I think it's the answer we're all looking for.
But those are the two things, training,
And a
vacant
follow-up,
positions, and uniforms.
and a follow-up to the gear.
Yeah.
Are you still recycling gear?
No, we're tossing it. At the 10-year mark, we're throwing it away. Yeah. Because there's so much, like nobody wants it. And it's a liability if we give it to another department.
Once it's exposed to fire first time, it's already an issue.
Chairman, I got one, I
Yes,
wanna go
Bob.
back to the supplies, I was looking at the lines way back.
Yep.
And I'm starting, at 4,500, you went over that budget several times, and you dropped it to 35, but, from 45, let's see, I'm trying to find out what year, because I can't have it, but,
19 or 20.
yeah, it started getting very close, you still had it at 45, but you were spending 3,250, around 3,000 for each year.
Yeah.
That's cut that kind of close on 3,500.
It
You got
is.
35, you've got 3,500 in your budget, but it's, as I look at down the line, it's very close. You wouldn't take much for that to switch over to 4,500. You comfortable with that?
Yeah.
I don't
Again,
know
it
that
was
you-
one of those things that I looked at, like you just said, it's like 32, 30, and every $1,000 is what we were looking for, so I went from 45 to 35 just to try to cover other costs.
Okay, I was just looking at the history,
Yeah,
and at first at 4,500, really went right over, but then it's holding around 30, well, let's say 32.
yeah,
But that's, anything could tip
I-
that over, so if you're comfortable with that, then.
yeah. I think a couple things changed too, like the assistant chief does all the ordering and he shops pretty hard.
Oh, okay.
And we can buy in bulk at the new station, and I think we're more efficient, so I'm comfortable with that for now.
You all set, Bob? I know Larry's got a comment.
Okay,
That's,
you can go on.
go ahead, Larry.
A smaller question, I didn't get my hand up fast enough. A smaller question than the battery powered jaws of life. $500 flashlights, what are their qualities and how many?
They're $100 a piece, so that was $5.
And what are their qualities?
They're just intrinsically safe, ruggedized.
Okay, so they are,
90
can be
degree.
used in an explosive environment?
Non-explosive.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay, fine. Four D-cell mag light?
No, they're
Humphrey.
like
know.
yay big and they're 90
Try to
degrees,
get
so
it
they're
going.
clipped to our coat and they shine out straight.
Like
And they're ruggedized, so they don't get destroyed. And
World War II ever ready?
All right.
yes.
We gotta bring this back, guys. We're up to an hour at this point. Bob, you got any final?
I wanted to follow up on the supplies. We're in August, and you're already overspent on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an error there.
Is it?
Yeah, that's not right.
All right, we'll get back to the but you're right, he's over right now, but
Yeah,
we'll deal with
I
that
think
later.
I think that they paid the credit card in the finance office and charged that entire line, or charged the entire credit card bill and needed to be divvied up.
Okay.
But I know about it, I just haven't passed it yet.
All right, you wanna wrap this one up?
Yep. So just real quick, that's the income versus expenses for the revolving account over the last 7 years. So you can see the income went up, the expenses continued, we pushed more to it, and we kind of kept it on track. The blue above the red is good because that was the money we were saving to purchase an ambulance. And then the green is when we bought an ambulance. And then as you can see, it kept getting closer until last year, the income dropped and the expenses didn't. And then this year, we're kind of trending the same way as you can see the income projection is down, the expense projection is about the same as last year, but it's flipping the other way. So every year we're taking chunks out of that as opposed to building it. So that's the reason for adding the full-time position and then trying to put money in capital reserve for an ambulance purchase. But that's on the CIP side of things.
Okay.
And that's kind of the breakdown of what we're spending out of that account. We can get into it more later. It's $215 roughly, and that's about what we've been bringing in. But like I said, I think we're gonna be below that this year. And that's the breakdown of cost for the ambulance. So the majority of what we're spending is staffing. So if we can get some of that staffing back to the budget, then this can self-rate itself. And then that's the total budget. 540 from the 73,005.
Okay.
Quick question, so on that income, that's not due to the lack of payment or anything in arrears, it's just because the expenses for operating is higher?
The income is, so the problem is it's insurance companies, and if we transport, so if we can do the same call volume, let's say the majority of the stations are Medicaid or Medicare, the $1,500 bill will get $300. If they have private insurance, they'll pay the full amount. If they have no insurance, or no Medicare or Medicare, we will get nothing. Nobody writes a personal check for their ambulance bill. It just does not happen. No, it's not a Milton problem, it's just the way it is.
Right, so is that why the income is lower because of those issues? Are you seeing a lot of that, more
Yeah.
so than getting
Yeah,
full
and
payment?
I have the ability to pull the reports, I've just been so busy and haven't really been interested in
Right.
it. But, and I could see like Medicare, Medicaid transports, and look at a trend to see if that's why.
You know, you just sort of, I understand,
It's
it's
so
complicated and
complicated.
time consuming.
Yeah, and I can, now that this is done, and I can spend more time getting that information if you guys are really interested in all that stuff, but it's really.
Are there
boring.
any municipality agencies that help with that, or is that just left to the individual departments?
Individual departments. I mean, the building company will, if I ask the building company, hey, this is what I'm looking for, can you give me a report? They'll produce it and tell me, show me like a 3-year trend on Medicare, transports, and
But they don't assist in any collections?
the building company does all the collections for us.
Oh, okay.
Like, they do everything.
Okay.
We tried last year sending out department, personal, hey, you got this bill from our building company, we're gonna send it to collections, can you contact us and work it out? And we got a little bit, but it wasn't worth Devin's time. The time he took to go through each account and send them a personal letter, we were thinking the personal touch might be like, oh, I didn't realize it. It
No.
didn't make any difference.
Mm.
So 2 other things real quick, and then I'll get out of your hair. We're still, so Middleton is struggling with their ambulance coverage. We sent them a letter last year saying we're gonna start charging you. They paid $9,000 in fees for us going up there mutual aid, because it's not mutual aid if they're not coming back and they can't provide the service themselves. So we're basically providing the service for them. We're paying, or they're paying us. That's been coming in. In June, they said, hey, we have this committee that we're formulating. Can you hold off on the bills? Because we're going to fix our problem. I said, sure. I'll hold off till September. September rolled around. They hadn't reported back to me on their findings, even though I knew they had been meeting. So their September bill included all the bills that I had held on hold. So they owe us like $6,500, and we'll determine if they pay that in the next couple weeks. Lebanon had the same problem. Sanford, I know we did this years ago, but Sanford, Acton, North Berwick, and myself all met. We wrote them a letter saying, if you're not staffing your ambulance because you don't have staffing or you can't or whatever, and it's not mutual aid, we're gonna bill you. So we bill them $2,000 because that's what we all agreed to. So I know it's different, but, and they've paid us $4,000 so far in the last couple months. I am working with that EMS committee in Middleton, and I've offered some sort of collaboration where they pay us annually to cover their calls, and but they haven't reported back on if that's what they want to do. But the number that I put together would be, if they go forward in that direction, they're either gonna stop paying for staffing or contract out to somebody else, and we're the most likely service they would contract out to. But that number that I put forward was $100,000 a year. So that'll help alleviate some of this stuff, if that's the direction they choose to go in, but they're not reporting back at all, so I don't know where they're at.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
That's all I
thank
got.
you.
All right, next up, Chief Kraus. You're up. Do we need a break, anybody?
No,
No? Okay.
I don't.
No, you don't. All right, Andy spoke.
Andy said no.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you,
Can you
Michelle.
tell us what the agenda is, what order you're going?
I'm just trying to get, because I know he's on call, so I'm trying to get him, and then I'm gonna go with the order of the
Okay.
folks that are in here.
Thanks.
I just know that he's on duty, so,
Thanks.
yep. Yeah, I'm not looking to hold you guys up to the end.
We're up by noon. I said I would, we're up by noon.
Yeah, it's gonna be close. I think one at the latest.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
See you later, Nick.
Yeah, it's working. He just, yeah, and it's actually hooked up right now to that. It just nothing's running on it right now. Just got to be brought up.
Tough to read this chart.
Yeah, sorry. Fortunately, was dealing with 2 domestics, a welfare check, and other fun stuff this morning, trying to get all this printed out, so it came out in black and white.
Larry chuckled, he appreciated the cost save.
Yes. He still remembers things in stone tablets, so we're all set.
Back to you on
All right, so the police department's budget broken down, obviously the largest portion of the budget is personnel.
Yep.
That hasn't changed from any of our other years. Full-time salary line is an increase this year of $14,799.44. This is an increase because of the new employee retention plan, putting all employees, all police officers into that plan, as well as funding the 8th position to the full year again, whereas in 2021, we did not fund the first 3 months of the year for cost savings to try to get us below default. This is the breakdown for each position that we have currently at the police department. 307 and 308 are currently open positions. They are not currently filled. Position 306 is actually 305 now, but position will be the same as pay-wise as 307. Part-time salary, there is no change, it's $12,000 still. I don't see a reason to make a change in this line. We currently have one part-timer, and we have a police fire chaplain that we share out of that line, that gets paid out of that line. Unfortunately, due to the full-time obligations to our current part-timer, we have not been able to use that line this year very much. The administrative position line, increase of $1,060.80 to $48,328. This is putting the administrative assistant into the employee retention plan, as advised by the Board of Selectmen. In your handout, you will see that the breakdown for that salary. I did not put it on the slide, but you'll see that line in your handout. Longevity and retention line. This line was created in 2009. Was put into the police department's budget only. In 2014, this line changed to only be for the administrative assistant. It decreased when we had the warrant article that passed to do a pay correction for the police department. With the employee retention plan, after having a conversation with town administrator, it was suggested that it stay in my line for better tracking. So it increases by $250 because the employee retention plan does longevity for employees over 10 years.
Yep.
So it will not just be for a singular employee within the department.
Yep.
Chief salary line, this increase $1,726.40 to $85,966.40. This is going into the employee retention plan as well. Grants did not change, still at $5,000. FICA increased by $112.27 to $4,220.89. This increased with the part-time and administrative assistant increases. Medicare is an increase of $265.88, $9,210.18, which is an increase from all of the wage increases. Retirement. This is a big number, unfortunately. Retirement increased $20,105.12 to $193,660.15. This is the first full year at 33.88%. Over my time as being chief, this has jumped, well, now it's 17%. Just in the time that I've been chief of police. When I took over in 13, it was about 15%. Now we're at almost 34%. So pretty close to a 20% increase over just the time that I've been the chief. When in actuality, if you looked at the retirements printout in 2021, we were actually supposed to decrease, not increase. And they increased us from 28.43 to 33.88 this year in 2021.
Okay, I have a question. In your packet, it says 28.43%, and then I'm looking, fire department is 32.99, you're saying 33.88.
33.88, did I not correct?
Yeah,
on the packet?
it's marked wrong. I don't know if your calculations are, but
My
this will,
calculations are not off.
this will,
Okay.
this will work it.
Okay,
Next chart.
and that's only on full-time people, part-time,
Full-time people. Part-timers
pay the
don't pay.
FICA,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Part-timers don't pay into retirement. So
So-
all my numbers, this is the calculation right here, so you should have that
Oh,
on
okay.
one of your pages as well.
So, I'm just gonna ask you, Humphrey.
What page are you looking at?
Well, I'm just looking at
It's
the
on,
front
it's on
page.
your budget one, the second page
So you're
on your
just
Okay.
handout.
looking at the-
Okay.
Yeah, just the front.
Why is it different for the fire department? Because Nick said 32.99.
They are different in the state.
The state.
The
that
state's
has a
different for
different one
fire and police.
Different for fire and different.
Different for the town
regular
employees,
town
too.
Employees and teachers.
Yeah, no, I know the teachers are,
Yeah, they're all different.
okay, I didn't
Police
realize
and
that,
fire
thank
are
you.
different, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Police department training, there is no change in this line, it's still at $5,000. As I've said in the past, this line has to change, it needs to increase. I did not increase it this year because we're already at a $44,000 increase for the overall budget. But this line does need to increase. Hiring and testing, another line that's unfortunately ultimately going to increase. We'll see how long the grant stays around for the psychological testing for new hire officers. There is currently a grant through the state that you can fill out the paperwork to request that reimbursement after you've paid it, but we'll see how long that money stays in that fund. Uniforms, this is another line that every year I come in front of the board, I advise you that this line needs to increase. Again, I've left this line alone at $6,000. It just costs $2,400 to outfit one officer. We just outfitted two, unfortunately one left right away.
Oh, really?
Yes, so we're down 2 cops again, so that's the hard part. So when we spend $4,800 out of our uniform line and we have 8 police officers to outfit each year and to try to replace some of their equipment, we're wearing this stuff 365 days a year in all elements and in all bodily fluids of other people. They don't hold up all that well, and they're not built to go for multiple years and not be replaced. So it turns into a bit of a problem. So we usually overspend that line, and I usually, unfortunately, have to wait until close to the end of the year to find out what I have left in that line to give the officers the opportunity to go down, spend what we can to replace what is absolutely needed to be replaced, not just replacing out uniforms and saying, well, that one doesn't look too bad, we'll keep it. Legal services, there's no increase in this line, $14,000 still. Contracting services, this line did increase. This line went up $2,956.23 to $27,073. This line increase, if you go about all the way down, just come up 3 to all traffic solutions, you will see that that's where the $2,500 increase is in that line. The $2,500 increase in that line is for the new digital signboards that we have, both the speed trailer and the digital signboard you see outside this room. It allows for the licensing fees and for the online service for us to be able to connect to both of those signs, to both monitor the signs and to be able to change the signs anytime we need to from remote access, instead of having to take a laptop, go out to the sign, try and change it at the sign, and then try and do the downloads right at the sign as well. We can access everything right from there.
Okay.
Legal notice and ads, $100, no change for this year. Veterinary professional services, $100, no change. Police electricity, I left it at $6,000 this year. We're going to be under that again this year, but I left it alone, not knowing what we're going to see next year from Eversource.
You said $100 for the vet professional services, $100?
Left it alone, yep.
And the packet says $500.
Yeah, it is 500. $100 on
And so you're not gonna get much at the vets for $100.
there. No, you're right, it is $500. No change.
You're not getting much for 500 either.
No, you don't.
That line is just
Still
a, if we have to pick up an animal, take it to the vet in an emergency service,
Yeah.
the $500 is so that way the vet will start service on the animal and then gives us time to contact the owner. Obviously, usually if we're here in town and it's during the day, the local vet has been phenomenal and gives us the opportunity to find the owner, and they can usually help us find the owner anyways. That's more for the emergency vet services if we have to drive an animal all the way to Portsmouth. But this is why you shouldn't cover domestics and try to type at the same time. Police electricity, as I said, $6,000, hasn't changed. Heating is still at $3,000, no change. We still have a contract with Eastern Propane. It's a very good rate with Eastern Propane. The selectmen have already signed off on that contract for fuel year 21-22.
Good deal.
Telephone services, this did increase $800. It's $4,500 now. We added 4 cell phones. We added another cruiser phone, and we added phones for all 3 supervisors, myself, the lieutenant, and the corporal. The 3 of us were using our personal phones to receive calls when we were off duty, and I've heard that they're going to be using department-issued phones.
Yep.
It's work-related. They shouldn't be using their personal phones for anything, so. Printing, $600, no change. Supplies is $6,000, again, no change. Vehicle fuel is $15,000. You can see that there's a significant fluctuation in all of those, but if you look at the last year that we were at full staff, we spent just about all of the $15,000, which is 2019. 2020, we were down 2 officers. This year, we're down 3 officers. And there are different, currently we are running with 3 of us right now because we have 1 guy on leave and we have 1 guy out sick. So most of this week, we've been running with just 3 officers, so really only 3 cars are running, so we're not using a ton of fuel.
Okay.
With being down, the number of officers were down, the cars are not, the frontline cars have been issued out to each officer. So each officer is, 1 officer is driving each individual car currently. So that allows us to keep the wear and tear, the maintenance down, and the fuel usage on the car actually stays a little bit lower as well, because you're not having me drive it one way, you drive it another way, you drive it another way, you drive it another way. So the car is almost getting used to what that driving is going to be.
Question, on the other vehicles that they're not, are we running them at all to make sure?
Yes.
So they are just being run
Yeah,
occasionally to make
the cars
sure?
don't just sit there so that they die batteries. and
That's
everything.
kinda-
No,
yeah,
the
kinda
cars
the-
still get used,
Okay.
and we still make sure of that. Vehicle maintenance is still at $6,000. I have not changed that. The only reason we don't change that is because of the lease program. The lease program allows us to get rid of the cruisers before they turn into a maintenance headache on us.
Yep.
And the fact that we have Wade. Wade can do almost all of it, we just pay for the parts. Cruiser lease purchase, there is a, I don't know why I missed that. There is a $3,000 increase in this line. The $3,000 increase in this line is because at the end of next year, we'll be starting the new lease for the cruisers in 2023. I've already been told by Ford to expect an increase in the cost of the cruisers. So the cruisers that we purchased at the end of 2020, that cruiser cost $33,000. When we purchased the cars in 2018, those cars were $28,000. So my expectation is to see the cruisers probably at $35,000 or $36,000. So if each car is $35,000 or $36,000, the equipment is costing us between $10,000 and $14,000 a year. We're looking at about $50,000 to $51,000 a year for the cruiser. The lease allows it to spread it out over 4 years, so we can make the payments that way. Obviously, this is an estimate number of $34,000. If, when I sit down and talk to the lease company halfway through and closer to the end of next year, that I find that I have to start pulling some things out of the cars and try to reuse things, which we do try to reuse, but we don't want to put things back into the car that are going to end up costing us money later on within a year or so. We don't want to put a light back in the car that's going to cost us $1,000 to buy that light again in 6 months. So that's the part of that number. Like I said, it's an estimated number as best I can get at, without knowing where the price of where the Ford cars are going to be.
Okay.
Any thought of looking into leased hybrid vehicles? Why not?
The hybrids
Curious.
really don't save you all that much.
Really? Okay.
I don't do
The
well
new
when you
police
have to go.
cruisers actually shut down when idle and everything else to
Yes.
save on fuel, so they actually are more fuel efficient in the long
So
run.
the new the hybrid police cruiser is $36,000.
Right?
The non-hybrid is $33,000. I put a part in our cruisers that costs us $80. That gives us an auto start clicker. We can automatically lock the doors, and it controls the battery and watches the battery level, and will just kick the car on for 15 minutes and shut it back off. That saves the gas and saves the emissions usage for our cars.
Okay. No, I just know the difference between a hybrid and a regular.
Yeah, for normal
You know, like
driving.
25 miles to a gallon versus 50 miles to a gallon.
But
Yes.
25 miles to the gallon is you driving it non-police related. So if we drove any car, if I drive that F-150 out there and I drive it as a civilian, then I'm gonna get probably 19 to 20 miles to the gallon. When I drive it using it as a police cruiser, I'm getting maybe 13 or 14 miles to the gallon. Thankfully, it gets very good miles to the gallon, and I'm getting 16 miles to the gallon out of it right now, even using it as a police cruiser. So they're getting much better. The hybrids are the same way. You're on them hard with the gas, hard with the brakes, you're everything else. You're not getting the same savings that you would get if you were using it as a civilian vehicle.
Okay. Just curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just for FYI for information, I know another department that was gonna try them. The electrical load that computer,
Killed.
radar units, all those other things add to the vehicle, that what I would call the civilian version of the vehicle was not able to handle the load. And thus, that department gave up trying to save money by
Okay.
using a civilian version, only because didn't cut it. When the computer dies and the lights don't work and something else dies, it makes it almost a useless tool. So it's been tried.
And Ford does have a law enforcement version, but I haven't heard very many glowing reviews about the law enforcement version.
Larry, you got a question?
And Ford even had a Fusion hybrid police interceptor.
They have the SUV, just
Yeah.
like we have in a hybrid.
Mhm.
But like I said, the agencies that I know that do have it have not heard glowing reviews about it.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll just ask that as you have to lease each year, just do some research and see if they're getting any better.
Yep.
Sorry, emissions, you know.
And that's why we have the idle right system in the cars, so that we don't run the cars 24/7.
Okay. Thank you.
Equipment maintenance, this is still at $3,000. This has not changed. As the board knows, I came to the board a few months ago because all of our MDTs, which are now 7 years old, I was hoping to get 10 years out of them. 10 years was a very ambitious hope because they're in the cruisers, they never come out, they're getting banged around, but that's why we buy the ruggedized ones, that's why we pay $4,100 per MDT, because we get 7 or 10 years out of them instead of getting 1 or 2 years out of them. As I told the board, those are all starting to come, well, not starting to come to end of life, they're at end of life. So we need to replace them. Problem is, we can't replace them right now because they're all on back order, so all of the companies we've tried to get them from, they're still on back order and can't give me valid quotes and can't tell me when I'll be able to get them even if I bought them right now. So, that $3,000 line for equipment maintenance isn't really going to fix them, and it's not even gonna buy me one of them, so.
Just for clarity, what is an MPD? Well,
Mobile data terminal, it's the tablet that's in the cruisers.
thank you.
Equipment purchase, $6,200. Again, you can see all of the items that if we have to purchase them, and even the radio costs are up a little bit, but if you have to purchase any of these items throughout the year, this $6,200 is gone very, very quickly. Equipment lease, $4,300, no change in that line. That's for the copy machine and the postage machine. And I know we're working on the copy machine.
Yes.
Mileage and travel, we leave this in there. Obviously, the officers have to come and take a cruiser if it's available prior to using their own personal vehicle, and they have to have permission to use their personal vehicle. We normally do not spend any money out of this line, but we still have to have it in case the officer, if I send one of our officers to the college in Massachusetts for the supervisor school for 2 weeks, we have to have that money available because we can't send a cruiser to Massachusetts or to Rhode Island with them for 2 weeks. Dues and subscriptions, $750, no change. Miscellaneous is $1. Educational incentive, this went up $500, just because we have more officers with degrees. Total budget is $985,827.87 for an increase of $45,576.14.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna have one.
Bob?
Chief, when you get rid of the vehicles, you must get a trade-in for it. Now, I know it won't be much, but where do you get trade-in when you get these in?
Not necessarily.
So,
That's up to the board that's up to the Board of Selectmen and as to how they want me to deal with that vehicle. If they decide they want me to trade them in, then we can ask for a value on the trade-in.
It's off.
When we tried to
That's all.
trade in
That's why I-
the last 3 in 2018, Ford offered us about $2,500 per car. The board at that time decided to sell 2 of them, keep 1 of them for the town's cleaner, and I think we ended up getting $2,500 in the sealed bid for both of those cars.
so what do you do with does the tires go with those vehicles? The 2 sets of tires?
So we'll send the tires that are on the vehicle, we won't send the tires that we have in the shed. So if we're selling it in the summertime, the summer tires will go with it, the winter tires stay with us if they're still good. If we're selling it in the winter, it goes the opposite way.
Okay, so you are saving money on tires when you get new vehicles, or you have to buy them anyway?
No, we would save on summer tires when the new vehicles come in, we wouldn't have to buy that batch of summer tires. So instead, so you're right, we have to buy two stacks of tires for the SUVs. We buy a winter tire, we buy a summer tire. Just because the summer tire, the all-season summer tire, does not work in the winter time very well for what we need it to do. It's great if you're just using it as civilian, it's terrible if you're trying to use it in law enforcement. So we buy the winter tire that is great in the winter. If we tried to drive that in the summer, we'd have to replace that all summer long because it's too soft. So we buy 2 sets of tires per car, but we swap them each year. So we have them on a cycle that it swaps each year on what tires we have to purchase. So we usually get 2 seasons out of each set of tires, and we can do that every other year. We'll buy winters, and then we'll buy summers every year.
I'm just curious, because if you sell a car, then you gotta sell the tires with it. So if
We
you
don't.
don't, you keep whatever's on,
Whatever's on it goes with it.
Just out of transparency,
Yep, go ahead.
A couple of these cars are bought through detail lines and through the detail line. And when we got the new pickup truck, we did trade the old pickup truck in, which we got a very good value for when we traded it. So that's why the old pickup got traded when we bought the new pickup. Just so people know.
And others have been transferred here for town use, so.
Yep.
Yeah, the pickup truck, we got $10,000 for a 2012 pickup truck when we bought the new one in 2019. So
Yep.
that was a better option for the selectmen to trade it in instead of selling it.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, Michelle. You want to go next, or,
I think this is
well, we can go in any
I
order.
bought myself some time, so if you want to.
No, please go.
Yeah.
Everybody's so kind.
Huh?
I said everybody's so kind.
I know. Well, I'm trying to make sure we go in and go to order for everybody, so.
Yeah.
Good luck, Chief. I know you're busy. Thanks.
Yeah.
you guys have other questions, you can just email me then.
Yeah, well,
you
I
very
did
much.
see the contract stuff, so I'll make sure we get it added, yeah.
That's the last decon.
What?
That's the last decon.
Back of my car. Oh, it's clean.
Sorry.
All set?
I'm all set.
Okay, so I think you all have a handout from
Yeah.
the proposed budget. So I have to give you a little bit of history before we get into the salaries, because 6 months ago, the Board of Selectmen graciously gave us a full-time employee into the office, which we eliminated 2 part-time positions for that full-time position. So that may be one of the first things you see when you look at my budget. So we're proposing $25,500 for a part-timer, $39,950 for the full-timer, and then the $57,500 for the salary elected. And if I understand, that's based on the pay scale? Thank you. And then the FICA and Medicare, of course, are reflected in that. The training has gone up this year because you're going to have a new town clerk tax collector, and she is gonna have to go get her certification. There are some workshops that the town clerk tax collector and the deputy will wanna go attend, and as well as some conferences. Some of those we haven't been paying for the last couple of years, because I've been involved with those committees throughout the state, so we just haven't paid for them. The registry of deeds is gonna stay the same. Legal notices is definitely an increase. If you look at the expenditure report, you can see that's why we increased it, because that's exactly what we spent. Professional services has gone up. We are budgeting for four elections, 3 that are scheduled, and then the 1 special election that we budget for every year. There's also an increase in, let me see, there's a service that we went and got estimates for about a year or 2 years ago to do all of the printing, mailing, stuffing of the tax bills and sewer bills, so that we're not under a last minute time crunch here anymore. And I think the estimate that we got then was about $2,000. Might have been Mailways, I think is the one that we decided we wanted to go with. So the professional services covers the Avatar program, and I have seen some of your meetings where you had discussions about if we were being billed twice by Avatar.
And I understand that that was a separate issue.
Yeah,
right?
they are. They're 2 separate programs. So there's Avatar Collect, which is what I have,
Okay.
and then there's Avatar Assessing, which is what the assessing agent has. But they do communicate, I can pull her information easily with my program.
Okay.
Interware is the company that we use to do our onlines for dog licenses, registrations, transfer station decals, beach passes, boat passes. That's the program that we're paying for annually. That's about $800. I'm sorry, I should go back. Avatar's $2,500 a year. LHS, of course, is the $5,500 for the coding of the ballots. And let's see, for the town election, we pay for them to print as well. The state ones, we don't pay for the printing. We only pay for the coding.
Okay.
For the Sanders searches, that is the contract that we do with Jane Sanders. She does the research for us when we do our leaning and deeding to make sure that we are notifying everyone correctly. And then we have $200 for the P.O. box at post office, and then $200 is an average of what we spend to either renew our notaries, or if we have a new employee, getting them to become a notary as well.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got almost $4,000 increase. Of those items, because I see the items, which ones actually, because last year we didn't see them.
Is the elections, because we only had 1 election last year.
Okay,
We have 4 that we're proposing for this year. Actually, I think we might have budgeted for 2 last year, and we're
yeah,
budgeting for 4 this year. And then the mailways, the new service that we're gonna tack on. So they do the mailings of the tax bills, the sewer bills.
so with that, would that not come off of the postage?
It could. You would think that, yes, the postage line would go down, but it's not going to. So what we learned this past March the amount of absentee requests was enormous. And with 4 elections coming up for 2022, it's gonna happen again. And if we shut down again like we were before, we'll see also an increase of people doing things through the mail for motor vehicles, for everything. We'll go back to, we were fortunate, if you look at our expenditure report, we received, you weren't here, Ernie must have been here, we received money back from the state to cover the postage for elections.
Okay.
I mean, it was substantial. So you don't see the actual money that we spent. It's gonna happen. We're seeing a lot of it now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people doing online stuff now.
Yep.
Maybe because they're used to it, maybe because they still don't wanna come in.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. The printing and copy line is still the same. We just leave it open. If the clerk that's coming in decides that that's something she or he would be more interested in, it's available. Right now, we work around it. We can do it. We can search for the information that we need online. We have a lot of dealerships we have great connections with where we just reach out to them and they're happy to help us. For supplies, that is the same as last year. It covers the actual paper for the tax bills, the actual tags for the dog tags, printer cartridges, drums, envelopes, labels, file folders, all that miscellaneous stuff that we just need to run in the office. And then the postage was a $900 increase. And that's, I'm thinking that you're probably gonna see it for absentee requests and of course the online stuff.
Okay, Michelle,
if we
on that one, you
outsource-
said it was the same as last year?
No, the postage is probably $900, it's $900 more than last year.
Okay.
Now, I was just thinking, if we outsource the tax bills and so forth, will that line might go down a little bit?
We
Yeah.
thought it was gonna go down, but not with the increase in postage and not with the increase of what we had seen with absentee ballots.
Okay.
That has increased
All right.
substantially. And then we have the equipment maintenance line, that's exactly the same. They did go up last year, and we do not expect that they'll be going up again this year. The safe replacement is the only thing that we have in our equipment purchase line. That has not changed. The mileage and travel is at $250. That covers the training conferences and the post office. However, we have access to a town vehicle, and I don't see us using that line. Memberships and dues, that will be the same next year. And then the miscellaneous line is one done.
And I will just add that probably outsourcing the tax bills and water, not water, sewer and all. I think that's a good idea because a lot of times Michelle will look for volunteers and probably most of us in this room have volunteered to stuff tax bills. But, unfortunately, we might not all be here and certainly, it's a big task to get the tax bills out.
And we have a deadline.
And we have a
It's
deadline,
just been
so-
so stressful.
Yeah. So I think it's probably a good idea to move forward with that.
I thought it was funny, Andy.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to take that task on full-time.
All right, Peg?
Yeah, I do have a question. Do you guys not pay into the New Hampshire retirement system?
We do, we fall under the town administrator's budget.
Okay,
for
all
that.
right, good. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, wow, how'd you
Yeah.
guys get exempt from that? Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions, comments? No?
Good.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Betsy, you want to go next?
I think that we should have Karen go right after.
Yeah.
Maybe, so.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just going to let Betsy know she's been sitting.
Yep.
Absolutely going in that type of order.
You won't have too much more patience. Find her.
wanna?
That one? Maybe mine, I don't know.
I asked a stupid question the other day, who's Tom? They said Tom Milton. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started because we really don't even need this. It's all right, we'll forget about it. The big change on the library budget is the salary line. And the trustees agreed that we should bring the employees up to their step on their rate. And that's why you see the big increase in there. As of right now, there isn't one employee in the library who is even on the plan, if you follow me.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me get my papers here. That's the significant change. The next line is the contracted services line. I did fill in your contracted services line, which somehow is less than the request, and the difference is of almost $200 is the fact that I also use that line if I have a grant and I have to do any matching funds. Like this year I had the ARPA grant. I went over the amount that was given and I used the contracted service line in there. So we'd like it to go back up to the 3,200. The heat line, I left the same right now. I follow the contract with Public Works. Right now, they don't have the newest contract, but basically, it is the contracted price by a 5-year average of usage.
Okay.
So that may or may not change. Telephone line, did I forget something here? No. The telephone line, I went back down to 900. If you remember, last year I still want to increase our bandwidth at the library. Because of COVID, I have not been able to work out anything with Atlantic Broadband. What I can tell you is with this basic service that we have now, that is part of the town contract. So hopefully Chris and I can, as Chris is negotiating the new contract, I can get an upgrade in service. Let's see, the supply line, which is the office supplies, I'm requesting $200 more. That line hasn't changed in a number of years. I usually am over. I know you usually go by last year's numbers. Last year we were closed at this time, so there wasn't a lot of usage in paper, bathroom products, that kind of thing. Postage, I've gone up a little bit. This includes the P.O. box of $90, and then the rest of this is primarily if we have any serious overdues, we send out a certified letter. The program supplies, this is books, DVDs, CDs, material that we circulate. This line hasn't gone up much in the past several years either. I'll leave it the way it is, although, you know, the cost of a hardcover book has gone up. Equipment purchases, this is chairs, tables, rugs, that kind of thing. I'm leaving that the same. Technology, hardware and software, the same. Membership and dues, I'm asking for the same thing. You'll notice I didn't spend it all last year. There were a couple of membership items that I didn't have to pay last year because we weren't circulating. I belong to a consortium, for instance, that circulates a 3D printer. We didn't do that this year. That also is the line that I use for conferences, and I haven't gone to a conference in over a year. And the same thing with mileage and travel. Usually conferences could be in Concord or could be in Littleton. So and again, last year I didn't go anywhere. And then the miscellaneous line of $1.
Mike?
Take a break after this.
Yeah, we're going to. We're gonna, just to show. But is anybody got any questions or comments? Mr. Brown?
On the contract services, right now, the custodial contract is in flux?
The custodial, we use the town custodian. We have $1 in that line just to hold it, but hopefully.
So then on the $200 increase is I just lost a word. Placeholder, is a placeholder for other contracts that are maybe in process.
Well, the $200
Was under
to
supply.
which I had referred is that I have asked for many years and usually spent $3,200 out of that line. And this year, the budget committee asked for me to break down that line, and there were a number of contracts, yes, but there's also like this $200 piece that isn't really a contract, but I know from previous years that we don't want to necessarily call it miscellaneous, but it's.
We can add, I know there was no room for you to add it in there. We can fix that so we can add the addition. It's not an increase that you're asking for, it's the same amount. It just, it rolled up to $3,061 when she entered the information. So, understanding that, we can, between Chris and I, we can fix that part of the form. Yeah, that wasn't an increase. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, thank you, Betsy. We're gonna take about a 5-minute break, and then you can have your grandchild come up and give a presentation.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thanks, Betsy.
We are still live, though, just to let everyone know.
What?
We're still live on the machine. We're taking a short break.
I sent you a text. You just sent me a text. Once? Did you say something about once?
No, I had a question, Chris. Seems like a lot of people, or a lot of departments are using the post office. Not that it's a huge cost, but why is it that everybody has a separate box? Why can't it be delivered? I'm just curious. Say it's on capital or say it's on.
Am I a good town track or what?
Yeah, thank you. You're an awesome tot. Do you want one of these? Yeah. She just turned a year old this week. And this is what I do on Saturdays. I
Hi, Larry, how are you?
You have been gifted with greatness for the day, huh?
Thank you.
I don't know about greatness. If that's what you're calling it now.
That sounds so much better than being
There,
stuck
I
with a
can't be
roof.
any quicker, there's no change but the 2%. Rihanna's baby, girl. Oh, can I say hi, Andy? Just like conjure off last week, and I can't keep doing it, so I'm more babysitter on Saturdays.
I only for a while.
I'm just kind of wondering, why can't we request a hold on Saturdays?
I'm not named.
No, that's a security.
Or we
Somewhere else.
separate lockdowns?
No, I know that mask is on.
Oh,
I'm not.
I'm just wondering why every department is
I thought I heard the computer. Too much light, I can't even see it.
Yep, that's bullshit.
Do you have a night watch?
No. And here, you know what I had to do? I had to change the screen a little bit. I never tried to do that.
There is on that phone, there's a button that says you can transfer yellow to a night watch.
Or just deliver and have a hold on Saturday?
Try that.
I found that out. Not anything intelligent, it was a button I hit.
Well, I didn't know it. I got a little more skill, not much.
Yeah, it's fine. Everybody at home is running off. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
just.
well, those are questions you have. I know you.
I'm not here to present
That I
anything.
have. I know, and it, because I have this question because really. Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen this.
Clean out my house, Betsy. Clean out for the library. Well, hi.
I always do.
And who are you?
Back and look at those.
I'm Maddie Jean.
Make sure.
I just turned a year old. Last week.
The joke I like about this kind of stuff.
I really wanted to get.
I have this if you want to put them up. There's 3 of them, but I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
find out if I can even get it working because.
I don't really need it because the only change is it's a 2% for my budget.
Yeah, no,
No,
you
we
don't
don't
have
know.
to, you don't have to.
Later in the day, we'll ask her.
Hi.
But I think,
Hi.
Well, I know.
That's why we.
So.
everything under salary the right way and then didn't change the 2 salary numbers. But now they're fixed in your printout.
I tried to go yesterday morning. I'd love to try that exercise.
Oh, she's looking for people. She had 2 people show.
So, but I.
Hey, you gotta come back.
Go to the end. No, I don't.
Nope. No, she's gotta come back.
So guess what, I'm like, we're getting it.
No, I was in the SAU.
And I'm gonna save our money.
I can't do
We
it.
did because,
So.
It's fun. She's
New Hampshire
awesome.
Department of
Nancy
Transportation
Cooper's
kept
awesome.
relocating my mailbox.
She had 2 people
Oh,
after the
yesterday and I
second
went in.
week.
Oh, well,
Yeah, I was-
yeah, there is that too.
No way, I'm printing.
Oh, no, it's too bad.
What it is, what it does, the password's right on. I didn't look
mine,
down, I
see?
just started typing
And I-
because
Nobody's gonna steal
I
anything.
thought
Just as I know signs, I can say.
Well, that's why the other day, well, actually, Tom,
That's
he
her
is.
little brother taught her that.
Isn't it sitting?
Joe.
Steve Gagnon, yes, Tom. This is the time we don't have a.
It's not plugged in then.
Batteries running too funny.
Yeah, so,
No, those questions need to be asked, right.
Alright.
That helps.
Why can't we just do
That's
one
not
paper
plugged in.
through, and then no, right, why can't we do like one clean order?
Nope, same with me. Nope, nope, nope.
All right.
All the
That's
ladies
what
laugh
it was.
for you.
Yeah, years, and it wasn't nothing when it was
Okay.
when it was a nickel item, just now it's a $5
Yep.
item.
It's a
Your voice.
Okay, I'll use my voice. That's not
I
hard.
know you can do
No,
it.
it's like Dover, I know you, Dover does it when they, the purchasing department sends out
No, you're not
for
getting
paper
that.
order, and, you know,
No.
they're purchasing / finding practice.
Yeah, I know. She's like, I just got these legs.
Oh, what they call it.
I just got these legs.
Yeah, he is, exactly.
in their paper, and they'll do that, but it's all under one order, so everybody's not. And I noticed it when we looked at all the
Small
contract
joke.
services.
The mystery of the confession booth, but the convenience of having a second bathroom just around the corner.
This is true.
All right, where's,
We got the entire,
Did you set the small one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
from when to when.
She gets dropped off at 8:15 in the morning and gets picked up at 6:45 at night.
no, we're gonna continue, we're gonna continue. All right, I think, we can get, bring us back to order. I know we're waiting on Mike, but I think we still, where's Peg?
Because I
Oh,
love
and Peg.
watching her.
Oh, she's in the back.
Huh?
Okay.
Amy's gone today.
I didn't realize they were both.
Yeah.
Actually, we gotta wait for Peg.
Yeah,
and
yeah, no kidding.
Mike, yeah, Mike should be back in a
The
moment.
last of the clan.
We got a couple moments here.
So I gave you all a printout.
Yes, I did see that, thank you.
Do you want me to hold the little one, or you want?
Sure, you can. No, I don't know if she'll go to you, Chris, to be honest with you. Go ahead, try.
I'm scared more than one woman, so.
May as well start early.
Chris?
There he is.
Yeah, that's a no.
All right,
Okay.
as soon as Peg comes in, we can.
Oh. Oh.
Good.
Just wait for Peg, and then we'll start. There she is. All right. This is true. We are ready to roll. The floor is yours, Karen.
Okay, do you want me to start at the end, the difference in the overall budget that we're looking for?
Um,
I'm gonna go right through this printout.
Well, you don't have to go through the whole printout. It's just basically touching on, the easiest thing is touching on what your changes appear to be.
Okay, the changes that currently the salary line for 2021 is for myself. I don't want to.
No, I told her she talks loud enough, she can talk from there because they can still hear.
It's 49,629.
And that's the reason, right there.
Didn't last, okay, you're part of the presentation, huh?
That's okay. So, and with the 2% that will go into effect, if it does, in 2022, July 1st, will be $50,128, which reflects a $499 rate change. This wage will put me on step 2, and, well, between step 2 and 3 of the wage plan.
Okay.
And I'll be the director for 12 years in March. Go on to the assistant. Her increase will go from 11,935 to $12,017, which is an increase of $82. And that will give her a wage of $18.36 for the first 17 weeks of 2022. And then the last 9 weeks, because she goes out of the general fund into the revolving funds as of May 1st. And then doesn't come back in until November 1st. And in that time, it's because we do all the beach and she goes on to the beach revolving fund.
Okay,
And
so
then comes back
on,
in for 9 weeks at the end of the year.
on that okay, I'm gonna ask a question just on the number.
Sure.
What number, because we have 24,109 on what I've got printed out here. What is your,
Okay. Keep going, there's a spreadsheet on it.
okay,
So I have 1217 for her total wage out of the general
okay,
fund.
that's what I wanted to
And it
make
has
sure
a
of, because,
breakdown of what she'll be paid for the first 17 weeks, and then the breakdown of what the last 9 weeks would end up being.
Yep, no, the 12,017 is what I got, we gotta make for an adjustment, thank you.
And then that just affects the FICA, not much, because I don't know how I ended up, that portion of the wages, everything below that came out right except for my wages and Diana's when I first submitted my paperwork.
Yeah, the calculation will come out here, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, why is there no change if the salaries
And
went up?
other than
Yeah.
that, there are no changes to this. I do know that our, training line is gonna be completely used because you have to pay the year before the 2022. You submit your application to go to the New Hampshire Parks and Recreation Conference, it has to be paid up front. So those fees usually come out of this budget for 2022. That they stopped training in person, they're going back to it. And the way they stopped collecting dues because they weren't offering in-person training for anybody. But that is gonna be re-implemented as well, probably before the end of this year. And that's the only change, that's not even changed, so that's the only change to my recreation budget.
Okay, Peg, you're up?
Yeah, again, New Hampshire retirement system,
Yep, that
Yeah,
all
that's,
comes out.
it's all under the town
Under the town
administrator.
administrator.
Yep,
I'm gonna ask a dumb question, because looking at the town administrator printout here, the big thing, I do not see anything with New Hampshire retirement system.
Yeah, I think that's worth checking. I'm not 100% confident that that's the way it's.
Yeah, no, because I've got Social Security and Medicare, but there is no New Hampshire retirement system,
That's
so.
never been in my budget, so.
No, I know, and that's why I'm checking, because
It was
full-time.
eliminated from the TA budget because I'm not part of the New Hampshire
Right.
retirement system, but there should be an amount because Brittany will be part of the system.
right,
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
That does need to be.
we will need to go and look at the total numbers to make
Yeah.
sure they're covered, right?
Thank you.
And can I ask
Thanks,
why why wouldn't it be in the separate departments?
Even, I don't know.
Just
Okay.
historically.
So we need to look into that.
Historically, it just fell under the umbrella of
Yeah.
TA. That's.
All right, well, we'll have to look
We
into that.
can, we
I
can
think
go
need to
back
look
and
into that.
that
it
needs
can
to-
be, because Peg's right, that's normally where we carry it, and it can be carried in those areas, we just need to make sure, so.
Right, and especially since there's nothing showing up in the
Yeah,
TA's budget for all of these New Hampshire retirement system
Where's it
people.
showing up in the expenses, do we know?
What?
Is it
right
even
now,
here?
I think it's showing up under salary, I mean, it's just
Just
it's
as
just
a
showing
one-
up as a separate line item as it rolls all up into the New Hampshire retirement system, but we'll have to go back and look at those numbers.
Okay.
But that's good, it's a valid point to capture that.
And I did mention in Diana's wages, she's not even on the pay scale yet,
Yeah,
after 4 years.
now that we need to look at as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions or comments on recreation? Because you've still got
Yeah, I have 2 more.
I'll bring the other two up and,
Oh,
yeah, so let's see, I'm gonna bring up supervisor of the checklist and, just so we have it here. And, let's see.
It's not appearing on the screen. Humphrey, did you want it to appear?
No, it doesn't have to, I'm just here if there's any notes that we've gotta capture. So, go ahead,
So the difference between this year and last year we, put money away for 1 election
Yep.
and a special election. This year it will go to 4. 3 regular elections, and 1 is the town election, 1 is a general election, and 1 is a state election, I believe, the November general election, and there's a state one in between. That's on the note,
This
when you
year
wrote
is
it, it's
the
not.
schedule will be the town election, and there's a federal primary.
Yep.
And a federal,
then the federal election, yeah, the midterm,
the midterm.
Yeah.
right.
And we always carry for 1 more in case, it happened to us a number of years ago where one of our legislators, after 30 days, could not fulfill the role. It required a special election, which,
Yep.
when that happened, we never had the money for it.
So to make sure of the amount, 2928 is the right amount.
Whatever I submitted was correct.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that that's correct.
make sure that it's.
And
Trustee?
trustee of the trust fund?
No change.
No changes, right?
Yep. Okay.
That's pretty easy. Any questions on the no changes?
Okay.
Please.
Done, good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Changes.
I just thought I,
We are out.
thank you, thank you, Karen.
I do just want to bring up the retirement is under insurance and
It's under,
benefits.
it is there, it just, we need to make sure it
And-
captures all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean,
No,
clarify
that's true.
that.
it makes sense to be there, but yet seeing the fire
It-
department and the police department broken out
Well, and I
separately.
think the reason is because everyone else within the town is under the one
That's
plan,
true.
and they're
It's
under
all-
two separate plans.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I think it was broken out into the three
Be
different
curious to
areas.
see what their rate is.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Much
thank
The
lower
you.
rest of,
rate.
bye Karen, the
It's-
rest of these people.
A lower rate.
It's
yeah.
very much lower.
It's like, it's crazy.
All right,
But,
Chris,
okay.
you are up. Do you want to touch, I know Butch has been sitting here patiently waiting to hear his, if you want to touch on the Public Works one and all that first.
Yeah. Yeah, so for highway, I'm gonna be playing the role of Pat Smith today. As many of you may or may not know, Pat is out on medical leave and could not attend today. It was my recommendation to not attend because, he's under doctor's orders to get better. And I just wanted to fully get better and recover. So the increase that you're seeing in the highway salary full-time, they're not asking for anybody more. It's just really, it is a compilation of the grade and step plan where we worked in the current salary. Everybody got a 2%. And that's literally where that number comes from. He does have one part-time person that only works 30 hours a week. Currently, that is not filled, correct? I mean, at present, wasn't it?
No, we're down 2 people right now.
Right, so that, it's in the budget. We currently don't have somebody over there. He's looking for someone, but that is carried in the, that's why it went up a whopping like $500. It's just the salary increase. And highway elected, salary elected is Pat's salary line, again, 2%. Part of what Karen pointed out, and I think with her deputy's line and her line, is if you look on the grade and step plan, given the number of years they're in for step, they're not accurately paid pursuant to the grade and step plan, because they realize that doing so would blow the budget up, because literally it would be a $5 to almost $10 an hour raise for some of these people. Pat's one of those positions. Pat's been with us 25 years, and he maxes out on the grade and step plan at like $42 an hour, but he's not paid $42, he's paid something like $38. So there again, he's one of those people that, with his own acquiescence to it, is not maxing out on the grade and step plan, or not following it, because he recognizes it would blow up his department's budget, and that nothing else would ever get accomplished. And the same thing with the fire chief. And so there's a number of those long-term positions that are with the town, that when we say we're following the grade and step plan, we are, but we're not.
Chris, I guess in my mind, that employee retention plan was put out as a warrant article, was approved, which should, whatever step you should be on, should be part of the default budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess why are we not following that?
Let me touch on part of that, because if you remember when we went through and discussed this last year, Chief Kraus, Marique, Pat, and all of this talked about doing that over a 4-year period of time as opposed to hitting it all at once. That was part of what they were doing when they negotiated the pay plan
Okay.
for the
so-
town, and then they would work that out over that 4-year, that
Mhm.
4-year plan.
Exactly.
Okay, so are they I mean, I'm just asking for Pat now, is he taking at least part of that this year?
He took like a 1%.
Above where the plan would have put him.
No, he literally took a 1%.
Oh, he did,
If
he
was-
did.
If he was up for it, it's like 1 or 2, but it literally is only,
1 point,
well, we
yeah,
can go
1 point.
back and look, it's.
1.6, yeah, 1.6.
So it wasn't quite even a 2%, it might have been 1.5%.
Yeah.
All right, because I'm just thinking, I mean, now that you mentioned that, I do remember that.
I think there's a concern, and that is, as an elected official, he could get voted out of office, and you could get someone in,
Okay, all right,
at that same grade, but would come in at step 1.
okay,
Would be a
thank you.
huge savings for and that's not what it would, if it was set up as a retention plan, then that seems counterintuitive.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. No, that makes sense.
Yep.
So that's
Same thing
good,
with the
thank
fire
you.
chief.
That was part of, yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, it is done with their acquiescence. When they sit down with me, and when we went through this whole exercise, and even I came back to the board earlier this year with, this is the cost or the fiscal impact of implementing the grade and step plan. I think it was late June
Okay,
or early July, and we all agreed that that's where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
But thank you for asking the question, because that points out
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no,
their sacrifice, if you will.
right, thank you, thank you.
And that's truly what
Goodwill.
it is a
Goodwill.
sacrifice, yeah, and a goodwill, right.
All right, while I've got your attention,
Mm-hmm.
good old New Hampshire retirement, theirs is also in that
Yes.
one
Yeah,
line?
Yeah, it rolls
Okay,
into the
good.
one.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Late development on Friday morning was in talking with Joanne, who's our contracted finance officer. She actually has a spreadsheet that she hasn't shared in the past, because it hasn't been needed, but she's gonna share it with me, and that is, we're gonna have the ability to go in and check these numbers by entering our own employees and their own salaries in the system. That's something I can share with
Mhm.
the budget committee, but she's gonna give us that, basically her spreadsheet, and we'll be able to better determine these numbers, because right now, you'll notice that in some of these instances, I'm using the same numbers as prior years. For instance, workman's comp, Primex, because those values haven't come in yet, but also the New Hampshire retirement system. So she's
Okay, good,
gonna
thank
share that
you.
with us, but it wasn't available. In fact, I didn't even know she had it till Friday morning. Onward. Training stayed the same, employee testing went up $500, partially because, one, the Seacoast Ready Care is now closed, there's new providers in the market, but not at the same cost. And we're also expecting increased expenses, if you will, the actual per diem rate, to get some of those things done. Uniforms stayed the same, their contracted services line stayed the same. Electric, we basically used the 4,000 that was in the, if you will, the current line, even though the default line's 5,100. Heat, same thing, we're using the same, this year's contract line, same thing with the phone. Supplies, again, a default line. Postage, $10. There's, every so often, there's some one thing they need to ship out. Let's say a box of something they're returning, but otherwise they bring their mail down here and they use our postage machine. Operating supplies stayed the same. You'll see that the diesel fuel, while the default line was 35, we did use 30 across the board. Again, I think there was a discussion earlier, we need to take a look at, see where those projections are going for diesel fuel supplies. Maintenance, there is a $30,000 increase in the equipment maintenance line, due to the age of the equipment and the age of the trucks. Is that Butch is nodding his head to me that I'm doing a fantastic job on that particular line. Questions? I'll pause for that. The rest of the lines going down, as you can see, are pretty much the same. Equipment purchase 500, membership dues 250 stayed the same, miscellaneous at $1. I think I've made it well known through all the departments that I'm not really fond of a miscellaneous line, unless there truly is miscellaneous stuff that occurs during the year. To me, there's always a valid area of operations that those expenses can go into, so even my own, I'm questioning my own TA miscellaneous line.
Yep.
Asked for details on all those things. Do you want me to move on to solid waste?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any question on the highway? No? Then absolutely.
The current price on diesel is $2.02 a gallon.
202 is
They were locked into that price until they redo their contract.
Oh, good, all right, thanks, Butch. That
Thank
was
you, Butch.
something we were looking for earlier, so appreciate that. All right.
state price.
Figure out how
All
to
right.
get it at that cost myself.
Solid waste, salaries full-time, there is, one position there. There again, it's the 2% increase, across, that's why it works out to 1.95. Salary part-time, he's got 3 part-time people, within that department. Again, you see that's a 1.94% increase. Training stays the same at 600, uniforms the same at 600. Contracted services, the same at 9,800. Disposal, the same at 81,079. Although I have to be, quite honest with the public and the board, if we throw away one more ton than the 81,000 to the 540, we do pay for it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, in 2020, we expended 83.3, so we know that it's,
I once had a budget committee that cut 50,000 from my solid waste line, thinking that it would induce people to throw away less.
How'd that work out?
It did not.
They took it next door.
It just kept rolling right ahead. So, at the end, we pay. Hazardous waste removal, again, that's at $1. We use the combined one through, it's held down at Rochester's Waste Management New Hampshire facility. Solid waste electric stays at 1,800, same. 500 for heat, same. Telephone, slight increase.
actually, that's
40
the same as last year.
Right, I used the same current operating figure, 696, but it's a very minor difference. Solid waste supplies down from 2159 to 1305. I think it was just, there was some, realizes we're not utilizing all, or we're not spending it all, so we give the savings back to the community. Again, postage, same discussion as before. Let's say be a package of, those NiCad batteries. Sometimes what they do is they package those up used and ship those out. That would be about the only. Vehicle fuel, again, it's just for diesel for the payload or the backhoe, and the over-the-road roll-off, thank you, roll-off truck to get the container down to waste management. And all the other lines are $1.
Questions or comments on solid waste? Peg?
Possibly just a comment. I mean, I know that all of the costs of getting rid of our waste, trash, is always going up. I think I've questioned this, I don't know how many times. As a resident, I pay $5 a year to take whatever trash I have. I mean, I talk to other people who, it's like $5 a bag every time they go. And it's like, a petition to maybe increase that price to cover some of those increases in getting rid of it. I mean, I would not mind spending, I know some people in town will cry and, oh my God, we pay our taxes, blah, blah, blah. For like $25 a year. Are you kidding me?
It used to be only $1 for a sticker.
I know, when I first moved here, it was $1.
Yeah.
It was costing
Which
more to.
barely covered the cost
The
of
stick, this
sticker.
covers the cost of the sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. And I'm being very, very serious. You know, I mean, took a whole bunch of whatever it is, bulky, at 8 cents a pound.
No, it's 10 now.
10
Yeah,
cents
it's
a
10
pound now.
cents.
We
10
just went
cents?
up, yeah.
Okay, but it's like, are you kidding me? It cost me $1.380 for a backload of stuff. Obviously not heavy, but still bulky.
Yep.
I'm just putting that out there because I just think it's pitiful that that's all we pay. And people who have their trash picked up, it costs a lot more than that every single week, and yet, you know, us who love going to the, and I still call it the dump, the transfer station.
We've
Yep.
had people from Connecticut come in and say, oh, I pay $150 a year for a dump sticker.
Yeah.
This is nothing.
It isn't
$5 is
anything.
nothing.
So anyway, I don't know, maybe I'll start a petition. There we go, and I'll be hated in town.
All right, I know Pat's talked about that himself, so. Any other questions or comments about the solid waste?
No.
All right, government buildings?
Government buildings, all right. Government buildings is staffed by, I believe, 3 people. Right? Carl,
Two.
2.
Oh, yeah, and the clean.
And the clean, right. So again, salaries last year, 112, now 121. It is due in part to, and that one's got an 8.5% jump. It is due in part to what I would call a salary adjustment. In other words, those people truly weren't paid accordingly to the grade and step plan, and there has been a more rational adjustment in their, recognizing their years in the step plan. Read trend or fall, yeah. Part-time only carrying $1, again, FICA and Medicare falls out of that. Uniform stays the same at $450. Contracted services stays the same at $20,054. Professional services only $1. Grounds and building electrical at $9,000. Again, that was carrying this year's operating number forward, although the default number is $9,600. For people that may not realize, is grounds and buildings does cover the electrical bill for a number of buildings that they maintain. If you look back through, for instance, well, they do it with water, they do it with, you know, things of that nature. All those other departments have $1 in those lines. They're all those other departments are processed or handled financially through this particular line. Same thing with heat, for instance. Pat wanted me to, you know, said, hey, you know, when I put together the budget, I still don't, and he's still chasing contracts for, let's say, home heating oil, for, let's say, the library, Milton Mills. So those kind of things are still, but we carried the same $4,500 that we had from prior years. But those numbers, we may be coming back to you and saying, hey, this is what they've changed. Grounds and buildings, water, those are the fees. For instance, this building doesn't pay a water bill. It's paid through this line under grounds and buildings. But that's what we're expecting, 3,000. It's the same as this year's operating line. Grounds and building supplies, the same thing, 4612. I did note it that the default item line was 2112, but we're just recognizing what we already carry.
Actually, the default line on that, because the budget was approved last year at 4612,
Yeah.
it would go up to the 4612.
All right. Postage, again, 10, I won't belabor that. Vehicle fuels, 4,000, most of that is pickup trucks. So that stays the same. Building maintenance stays the same at 20,000. Cemetery maintenance, There was 5,000 in the default line, we're carrying in $1. That cemetery budget is still in flux, because the cemetery trustees are still in flux. That's a whole separate discussion itself. Grounds and buildings, equipment maintenance stays the same. Equipment purchase, they're not intending on purchasing any bigger items. It's in at 1,000, although the default line was, again, would the default line be 1,000 or the 6,600?
It actually should drop, because we knew it was gonna go down.
Okay.
Well,
But here's the thing, if
Yep.
that isn't our call, that is actually up with the town on whether or not that $1,000 was the right number. So there's nothing wrong with carrying over a default line. We've
Yeah.
been down that
Right.
path before,
Yep.
so,
Alright.
so you're okay there.
Okay, and equipment lease, 500 stayed the same, and miscellaneous at $1. So you can see there isn't a big fluctuation within the grounds and buildings line.
No, not at all. All right,
And
any,
those are the three budgets that Pat.
besides Peg, any other questions or comments? Because I know you put your hand up.
No, Peg just
All
always
right.
asks.
Nope, Peg, go ahead.
Or Pat, whoever. Anyway, I know you said that the cemetery budget is in flux, but we've talked before that cemetery,
We're gonna bring that one up
you
and go
get,
into it,
yeah, you get money
Yep.
in to cover things,
Yep.
and I don't know, I mean, you've got cemetery maintenance in the grounds and building, but you reduced it to $1, and this one is, I don't know.
Good, yeah,
Anyway,
good.
so we'll talk about it.
We're gonna talk to that one
Okay,
specifically.
good.
We did
We'll
carry
talk
that
about
over there, so. Larry, was that a,
If you want comments on the cemetery, yes.
yeah, we're gonna bring that, we'll bring that up in a little bit when we bring that budget up, talk to it.
Okay, good.
All right, if there are no other questions on that one, we can go back to the top of the list for you. You're wearing all kinds of hats. Butch, if you wanna stay, you're welcome to stay. It's up to you. That was it for the coverage. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, is there anybody who would like to speak to the present status of that mythical, I say mythical, boat ramp?
Oh, that would have been, I don't know what you want.
Yes.
Okay.
The mythical boat ramp, Karen's been very active in the last couple of weeks of actually reaching out to other firms to do the permitting and application process with the state. There's apparently people out there that are,
Headhunters.
no, that to them, it's not a big deal to apply for it. So, she has tried to keep me up to date. There's been 2, if not 3, consultants that she's talking with that regularly work with New Hampshire Fish and Game and the Wetlands Bureau to get these things done. So, is moving forward. But that's all I can recall from the discussion.
and that's exactly where it's moving. She is moving on it. It's just, it unfortunately takes a little bit of time with,
No
but-
complaint, just
yeah.
information.
Yep. All right. With that in mind, the town administrator budget.
Let's see, yes, starting at the top. You'll see my contract at 91,711 in this year's budget, moves to 93,380 next year. I want to be clear to the taxpayers that when this was originally proposed to me, it was proposed as a 3%, and I believe in setting an example, and at the time I asked the board not to give me the 3% per year, that I'd only like if they were moving to a 2 for everybody else, that I think you can't lead if you don't lead by example, so I stuck with the 2. The other thing, and I don't mind sharing this with people, even, it's a contract that can be a public document. I opted out of the New Hampshire retirement system, which saved the town about $12,000 a year. I did get part of that back, I think about $4,500 in salary. So, and overall, there was a savings back to the town around $6,000 in round numbers. But that's just in an effort to be clear.
How can you opt out?
The town administration or town manager position is the one position in the state that you can hold full-time and still apply for your state retirement if you choose to. It's a one line in the law. So
Okay, thank you.
that's why it is. The next line down is appears to be a huge increase. It's 51,407. This would be for the finance/welfare officer. Currently, I'm the welfare officer, but to be honest with you, it is taking away a significant amount of time, not allowing me to do what I really should be doing. There's a number of plates that I have spinning, but they're spinning really slow. Once Brittany is up to speed as the finance officer, she is going to then start assuming, or sharing with me some of the welfare duties. Her salary is, again, based upon the grade and step plan. It is the same grade as the other finance officer. She comes in as, I believe, a step 3, and that's how her salary was calculated. If you want to break down on that, I could get you that.
A question on this, Chris. Is this replacing the welfare contract line?
Yeah, when we get down to welfare, you'll see that there's, I believe, zero money in welfare for labor.
There's also another piece that if you, refer back to last year for a moment, if you look down under the contract services and see the big drop in the contract services, those of us that were all on the committee last year, when we were trying to get answers, I believe a lot of that money was in that contract line, and we did not have it all defined. So he's reduced the contract line to offset those.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, to offset those costs.
The welfare contract
Yeah.
services, which is where the salary would have come out of, dropped by $6,470.
Yeah.
But that money was used in part to firm up this position.
Yep.
Yep. Let's see. TA salary, elected, those are, the board stipends remains at $69.30. The phone stipend remains the same at $480. Social Security, Medicare fall out of that. TA training, carried $900 as a default, $500. Admittedly, I do want to do some training for myself and possibly my finance officer, so as those things become available, I wanted it in there at roughly $830. Let's see, legal services line carries across, again, the same, it was as an operating line of $33,500, and that's $33,500. That's what I've carried across. Registry of Deeds, same amount, $300. Contracted services, default line was $146. It's dropping to $64,294. Probably worthy of some comment as to how and why. The short answer, I don't know.
Well, part of it was
Long
what I was
answer?
bringing up just a moment ago.
Okay.
We knew that we had some of that in
Yeah.
there, and that was not defined well last year.
Exactly, that's probably the best answer. It wasn't defined well.
So just a housekeeping.
Can I, I'm gonna touch on this for a moment. Chris and I talked earlier, and I don't remember what I did and didn't say in the budget committee, but when we created the form, which you guys all know we created, the intent was to finally identify the contracts in that separate area. As those got identified, it clearly defined that you didn't need $146,000 to cover all of that, and that's now a big piece of it, so we're not gonna be guessing as to what the contract costs are.
Correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, was
Yes.
this about the MS4?
He had some information in there, but he never, and without getting back into names, last year when that came about, could not give us a defined number.
No, but he increased it though.
He tried to cover, he did try to cover that as part of it, but it was never put into a contract issue for us to go and and put in there, so,
It was a last minute thing.
yeah. But I don't think I don't think there's anything there for that right now for this coming year, so.
Correct. Yeah, if there was a contract, let's say engineering services for MS4, there's not a contract.
There
A,
isn't
that
one
I can
now.
find, and B, it's one of those things that the board asked when they hired me due to my background to handle, and we are handling it.
Well, I think we did hire somebody for the MS4 only because we have to.
Well, but that was
Right.
under a separate encumbrance issue too.
Right, I
So,
think it came out of unanticipated funds
Yeah,
to pay for that.
yeah.
Just throwing it
But it
out
wasn't
there.
under, it wasn't under this contract line here, is what it come down to.
I've laid awake at night trying to make sure that, in other words, that I haven't dropped the ball and that some contract isn't covered. I did research the computer the other day, found the 2021 fiscal year backup, and the same number of contracts and providers that were in the initial analysis are within this year's initial, or the same analysis. So I have all the contracts covered.
Yep.
Is basically what I'm trying to relate to you. So I feel very, and Julius and I have looked at it left and right, up and down, because he's the continuity between last year's fiscal process and this one, and even he admits, don't know.
Yep.
Well, it's
Legal notices ad stays the same.
$80,000.
So any more questions? But I mean, I don't need to gloss over, but I can give you a breakdown of what the contracted services are.
No, actually,
And
we
you
have
actually
that,
have it
we
in
have
the
the breakdown here.
tab, too.
Yeah, we have the breakdown here.
So, one of the other big changes that was gonna occur, and the reason why it's not even 80 that was which was one of the numbers that Ernie had, is for this TA salary finance position, part of that is actually a reduction in Stonehill's services,
Mhm.
which is Joanne's position, 1 day a week. That was 57 an hour. Admittedly, that's going down to 2 hours a week for next year's budget. Based upon my discussions with her, she's happy about that, and so it's 2 hours over the 2 hours each week for all 52 weeks, irregardless of whether we call her or she comes in or she does something remotely. And a lot of the stuff that she does can be done remotely and or answered by phone. So we cover that, but at the same time, that major reduction that you see is offset by, yes, bringing the finance position back in-house with a town employee. So there's a savings there that offsets the cost. Okay, just want to be, again, clear. It's not magic, it's just addition and subtraction. Legal notices, 900. Professional services, they had it again at 59.75 with a little trimming adjustment, realization of what we need or don't need, it's 48.25. Street lighting, 17.211. It's basically an adjustment based upon, what we actually have for street lights, period. Water bill, again, $1. Telephone, 4,800. That number is based more on the historic of what we've actually paid within the building. I looked at the 5-year average that the information provided, and that's a more reflective number. Same thing with the printing and copies, the 6750 is a more reflective number of what we've paid for that. Supplies, 4760. Again, that's the more of the default number, because the default number was closer to the average. Vehicle fuel, I dropped by 300. That covers the vehicle that's out in the parking lot that the building inspector, code officer, myself, other people share. I'm not planning on going anywhere, so that was more reflective of how much the vehicle is actually being used versus just leaving it the same. Vehicle maintenance, again, if it's not being used that much, I brought the number down a little bit. It's operating fine. We don't expect the bottom to fall out of that vehicle, so. And vehicle registration, it's just simply the $40 that we have to pay through the Public Works Department to inspect and register that vehicle. Equipment maintenance, again, 2,000 in the default, 1,000 in the operating budget. Took the middle of the road, 1,500. History there. 1,900, again, equipment purchase, same thing as what was in the operating budget. Seems to be working, don't need to break it. Equipment lease, 4,011. I have asked Brittany for a breakdown on that. I want to drill down on that number over the next couple months. If there's an adjustment, I would want to bring it back to the board. Mileage and travel, again, I don't plan on going many places. A lot of these trainings are being done online, Zoom-wise, or participatory meetings through the computer. So don't expect to have to be traveling all over New England for that. Membership dues, the town was carrying $41.83. A lot of that has to revolve around like the Managers Association, things of that nature. I'm not as involved with that. Also, again, there's a lot more online participatory stuff going on. So if, for instance, there was like going to the managers conference that's out in Portland, Oregon, I know a number of the other managers went. I'd rather do it right from the home base currently for the next year. Employee functions, 300. If I had to ask for one thing, one bump as a TA, it would be doing that, team building. There's a number of smaller things that add up to a big difference within the team. Team being the whole town employee staff, and a little bump there would allow me to do that. Let's see, bank charges still at 60. And there again, the TA miscellaneous, I put it in as 500 because I don't know what I don't know yet. And but I am drilling down with Brittany, what have we spent that on for this year and for the prior year. I like to know where that's going. Is it being really spent in the right area?
I think miscellaneous things are like, giving long-term employees, plaques and.
Again, I think that should come out of the employee function.
Yeah.
Well, then,
Yeah.
but moving forward,
Yeah.
that's where that money went to. So just an FYI.
Yep, I understand.
I will say, and this is 36 plus years of government service, almost always a miscellaneous line item was a $1 item because it's not a planned event. And you may spend more, but that's why it goes before the board to do it. But if you generally speaking have spent on average for things like you mentioned, Andy, plaques and those types of things, that could go, if you know that you're doing it, that actually should have its own area. Or it should
Where
go
Chris
under
is
one of the
new,
other.
I'm just trying to help him
Oh,
out.
no,
That's
no.
all.
I appreciate
Yep.
the insight.
Yeah.
It's also, as a fellow taxpayer, if I'm looking at the budget, it's where my spidey senses go highest is on lines that say miscellaneous.
Right.
So that's all. Which
All right.
one would you like next?
Hold on one sec. Question, Peg?
Peg, of course, Peg, I'm sorry. Bank charges. I mean, I know this has been a hot topic at our budget committee meetings.
And there's going, I want to address that because that's been a big thing. Chris and I talked a little bit, knowing Brittany's trying to get a handle on where things are. Chris, Brittany and I are going to talk because it's to find out what those charges were we were looking at. And I know, Bob, you brought some recently. We're trying to figure out if those are credit card, if those are some other things, as opposed to bank charges. Because we don't have a good handle on what it's called, what it is at this point. So you're right.
So at this point, do we even have a breakdown of what this $60 would be covered?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, good,
That
that's,
is for bad checks.
That's,
The bank will charge here.
that was supposed to be the intended purpose,
That's the
right?
intended purpose of
Ah,
that.
Okay.
That line, that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. I
But
would-
the
I
other
would
bank
agree with
charges, we don't know.
We don't know about that
I would
one,
agree
but.
with that.
But I would think that if I gave you guys a bad check, that I would have to pay that.
Oh, you will.
You will.
You will in the long run, but the town gets hit with it in the account in the first place.
Oh,
Then they
okay.
have to recover it.
So no
Didn't know
bad
that.
checks.
Larry, you have a comment, question?
Only to you, sir.
One, in
take 'em.
terms of contract services, is there a particular file for contracts which can have an adverse effect on the town if you don't pay attention to them? I'm thinking of the renewal contracts April 1st, I think, for the telecommunication towers. And secondly, going back 3 years on bank charges and interest to see whether the banks that we have switched to are actually the better deal that they were presumed to be.
I think that's all gonna be a part of what we need to investigate with those charges, absolutely.
Want to ring that bell again?
Yep, no, I agree. I agree. All right, any other questions on the administrative part? All right. Treasurer appears to be no changes at all. So, no questions on that. Moderator,
Good one to bring up. So there are, again, it's, every year this is more or less a formula that I've prepared. In other words, you take the salary, moderator's salary that's recognized at 175 per election, you just type in the number of elections. And I always looked at the calendar put out by the Secretary of State's Election Division Office, where they planned or told us how many elections that they were recognizing. And in this fiscal year 22, they are recognizing 3, so I always carried 1 more for that anticipation. I just remember the year that we didn't carry that 1, and I'm not sure who was on the board, but because the budget was so tight, they were concerned where were we going to find let's say the $1,000 for the salaries to run the election and even print those certified ballots, the ones that need to be run through. So that was, because it was such an upsetting item, that's why we carry 4 elections. The question I have for the group is, I am your current town moderator and school moderator. I have asked the supervisors of the checklist and other people, do they want me to wear both hats the day of the deliberative session and the day of the elections? Meaning town administrator and town moderator. I see the issue from both sides. That if I were to disagree with the group as the administrator, no, I need that money, how would I restrain myself? And the other question it comes down to in this particular line, the moderator salary elected, I have to admit I'm conflicted. I'm recommending that you keep the $700 that's in this. Let's see if I'm reading right.
Yep.
Yep, $700 in this line, in case I'm not able to perform those duties on those days, that you have somebody to hire. But I would like to go on the record that I do not want to be compensated on an election day as the moderator if I'm employed as the town administrator. I don't think that it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know why, it just does.
and I will step in because I know this is not about, and that's the one thing I want to make clear, and for the public at home as well. I agree with you to keep the money because this is not Chris Jacobs' money. This is moderator money for whoever will be the moderator. So in that regards, that's what the line item's for. So
Right.
true.
I mean, at one point I did put a 0 in this, and then talked to Joyce, and said, oh, no, you have to plan on.
Yeah, you have to have somebody paid for that.
We have an issue that day, because we did this past deliberative session. Yeah, we need to find somebody, and they need to be compensated, so
Yep.
that's what.
And I appreciate your ethics.
Absolutely.
So,
Mike?
So, town moderator is an elected position.
Correct.
Okay, so, where am I going with this? I forgot what, I got my train of thought on, sorry.
What was you talking about last year when you were the
No,
moderator?
no, it's, cause I was asked to stand in, that's all. That's an elected position.
For how many years? Because I know we changed it for the school board for 3 years. What is it for the town? Didn't you guys change it too?
Yeah.
It's 2 or 3.
it's 3.
Okay, all right.
Yep. While you're trying to come up with that, Mike, Larry, you got a comment?
The question would be, who appoints the deputy moderator, and does the moderator decide how the deputy will step forward?
I thought I did, but I was corrected by Karen Brown as the supervisor of checklist. In the event of, that the moderator cannot fulfill his duties, it's up to the supervisors of the checklist to appoint them.
Oh.
Yep.
And so the conversation last February revolved with them. And based upon my recommendation, they agreed to hire Mike Bowling.
Yep.
Or appoint Mike.
Okay.
I think you've done a
Mike,
good job.
Yep.
I'm just saying, so I would like to keep
Have
them.
you, have you grasped what you?
It's gone.
Been there, done that. All right. But the idea is, of course, we're talking the budget. The budget's got to cover
Yep.
if whether you in the position are in the position and choose not to take the salary. That's a choice that that's going to be worked on. But the budget has to be there for the position itself. So yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else on the moderator one? All right. The next one up is the budget committee. You and I've already talked. I'll just touch briefly on it, and then we'll go back to the next one. We had the 1,650, and I'm going to start with the professional services because that was the biggest line item. What ended up here was blank, but the budget committee training still going to carry the 210. That'll be something we'll discuss at our meeting. And I'm going to carry the $400 for legal services, which is for all of our notifications through the newspaper and everything. We didn't have to pay for training last year, so I don't know what's going to happen though, but that's covering 3 people at about $70 per training session. And what I am doing at this point is I'm dropping the printing and copying cost from the $40 because it isn't down to just to carry $1 in case something happens. Right now, it's all being covered through the town, so don't expect that to go anywhere. With the budget committee in here, I mean, we'll talk further if there's any comments on it you'd like to make. That's fine too. But if not, next up is assessing. We're just rolling now.
Switch your hat now.
Yeah.
All right.
New hat, Chris.
All right.
Bruce, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Butch.
Yes, the assessing clerk line comes in at $48,360. This is based upon hiring a new assessor. Kind of late breaking news, but Kathy Wallingford has retired. Her retirement was effective yesterday, although she said to me, "I'll see you Tuesday."
Some people love to do things on their own.
What that means is, and I'm still going to compensate her. I
Yeah.
don't think that she's going to come in. Don't expect her to come in for free. There are a number of things when you're the assessor that take time to work out. Tax payment agreements, things of that nature. So Kathy will continue to see those through. We have made an offer to for a new assessor. She's verbally accepted. It is someone who has 10 years of experience working for other communities and 4 of the last years working for the state. So the new person comes in at the grade of, that Kathy was assigned in this grade and step plan of 19 in year 1. That's why you see a slight decrease in what Kathy was getting to this, but at the same time, it is a very respectable wage. I did ask the new person what she would, if she was satisfied with what the grade and step plan offered, and she said yes. The person is gonna be is a Wakefield resident, so lives relatively close by, but basically hired, and the board supported this past Monday, going forward with her offer letter. I would not want to say her name until I had a signature on the offer letter and a firm start date determined. But I can assure you that it wasn't just my decision, there was 4 of us that sat in on the interview.
Quick question. The Avatar software, does she have experience with it?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
One of the interview questions was, would you want to make a change? Or she said, no, Avatar was the way to go.
Okay, so
There you
she
go.
is familiar with it, all right, thank you.
Very familiar with it.
Good,
Yep,
thank you.
from a state level and from a professional level. Yep. So the FICA and Medicaid are based upon that particular line. Training, again, we carried the default line of 150. Registry, we carried the default line. Legal notices, the default line of 100. Software support, 5,500, because that was one of the questions. Do we continue with that software support? Yes. Emphatically, enthusiastically, yes. So you'll see assessing professional services, assessing, I don't know why it's written that way, drops from 2,000 to 500 due to the person that we're bringing in. The assessing contractor position, her line goes from a default of 40,000 to 4296, again, based upon the contract that we have with Avatar. To be clear, Avatar's people actually go out and do the on-site assessing. I'm saying that more for those watching from home. And the assessor that we have is more in-house, so that as people walk in, she's there to work with them, and also a host of other things. Printing, again, it's all done under our line. Again, I'll be looking at that in the future as to why we have 20 different printing lines. Supplies, I am anticipating, she probably want a new desk. After 15 years, I think the one that's there is pretty gouged up, but I have kept that in there for $350. Postage, again, most of that is covered by our particular line, although at times there are specialty postage, especially with assessing things that have to be certified, so that's somewhat why we're carrying that line. Equipment maintenance, I'm not, and I've talked with others, there's not much in the way of physical equipment that isn't covered by other lines. Equipment purchase, same thing. I mean, I might have to put a new printer at her desk for, but again, 100 would cover the base part of it. I don't see any other special equipment. The dues line, and this stayed the same as the default. Membership dues is, the state, the association only has a $10 a year dues, so I don't know why we're carrying 20 or 30, but that's, so. And again, miscellaneous, you know how I feel about that.
Yep. All right, any questions on the assessing part? All right. You already mentioned earlier health, dental, and the retirement. We don't have the newest numbers.
Right,
We
those
know
are carried
that.
through.
So those are carried through from last year.
Yeah.
I've got them highlighted here. Peg, you have a comment?
Of course. Life insurance. Who, I mean, I'm just looking at the
Yeah.
amount. Who qualifies for life insurance?
I believe it's a portion or a part of when you sign up for health insurance. It's like a add-on bonus, if you will. Most of it's covered. It's been very typical that, in all these, contracts, it's almost like it's an underwritten, it's carried through. For instance, if I die on the job, there's a policy paid out to my beneficiaries equal to the value of my position. I think it's the same thing with the assessor, it's the same thing with the land use clerk, but it is almost a minor
But it comes
cost.
through, I guess I don't understand. You say it's part of when you sign up for health insurance? Because you guys are on school care, right?
Right.
I mean, I just know that we have a totally separate plan for any life insurance.
I can drill down and give you some more information on
Yeah.
that, but that is.
Yeah, no, I would like to
typically how
know
it's
what
done.
you guys are, seriously, thank you.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
know in my prior 2 jobs, it was the same thing. When you signed up for health insurance, you were also underwritten for,
Is the
life
insurance
insurance.
deduction
Yeah,
a
no, that's
matter of fact, it was,
for the
That's what I
default?
gotta ask.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
I thought I'd
thank you.
ask you
That's
first
just
before I-
That's why
curious.
it's not a surprise to me. It's more of a normality than an abnormality.
Okay. All right.
All right, next up is the unemployment insurance. I noticed you got the 5,000 versus the 5198. I don't know where the 5198 came from. It's just, and it
Neither
hasn't
do
been
I.
spent, so that's why you put the 5,000 down as just a general.
It's just something to carry through.
Yeah, and now if we get any more detail, we can adjust that.
Maybe it's an engineer thing, but I think when you put in 5198, you actually put in like you actually know what
Knew
that
the
is gonna
actual
be.
number. That's kind of what my
No,
point was.
I didn't,
Yeah.
yeah. If I'd have put in 5001, I'd have said, oh, I must have known. No,
Yeah,
that's why it's in this 5,000, because I know I'm gonna be looking at it
So-
again.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. And workman's comp, we haven't got finalized numbers from them yet, I take it, or is that gonna be the carryover?
Workman's comp, again, that's a policy decision.
Yeah.
In other words, at the end of each fiscal year, they look at your incident rate
Mm.
for the prior years or the prior 12 months, and then determine what
Make
that
the
is and
adjustment,
send
right.
you and say, hey, this is what it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
so that's gonna, and that'll just be
Yeah.
matched out anyway, so.
Exactly.
All right, and property insurance, same principle at this point.
For instance, yesterday, or Friday, we tax deeded 5 properties. I now have to notify Primex that we tax deeded 5 properties. It may adjust our rate.
Yep. Okay.
At the same time, we got disposed of 2 properties, took them off of our liability side. So that's why this is something that's always in flux.
Yeah, understood. All right, and of course, property insurance deductions, there's enough, that was the same as what we had in the past.
Well, what is that?
If we were to make a claim,
Right.
we have a $1,000 deductible.
Right, so
On
why do we
for-profit-
just have $1?
Because we haven't had a claim, is why they just carried it. Because you can't anticipate the claim, but you can have a default that covers it.
Okay, all right, I mean, that's what I thought it was. And I'm
Yeah.
going, why would you not? I mean, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good.
The expectation is you're not going to, but you do have to have something there just in case under the default.
Again,
That's my understanding of
Depending
it.
where you work, I know
Yeah.
in the prior job, they carried closer to $100,000. Because it wasn't when they were gonna file a claim, it was how many per week were you gonna file?
Mhm.
So you carried a much larger number. It was a higher risk community.
Okay, so the default will be the 4,000, it's just the.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yep.
okay, I'm okay with that one then.
All right, cemeteries up next. This is one of my. And before you get started, I'll share with everyone. Chris and go ahead, Mike.
Hey, all have to excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have to leave.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Hope this came up.
That's okay. You can watch the balance, and
Yeah.
we'll carry it.
Thank you, everyone.
Our meeting's on the 28th, so.
Yeah.
All right.
See you then.
Thank you, Mike. We still have a quorum.
See ya. Take care.
Chris and I talked about this. We talked about this last year as part of the budget committee. And knowing that the cemetery, we have to cover the charges as part of the budget, but it's always been kind of a conflict with me between this, and I'll step in and talk about the sewer too. We know that that's gonna be offset by revenues. So the expectation should be that whatever the actual projected cost is, the default should be matched. And that was one of the things that we were going to address here today. That kind of brings up.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, if we go back to what it was last year, Chris, and I know you weren't here, Andy and Claudine are aware of it, we had actually dropped the software thing down. We dropped the software down to $1 because we increased the maintenance to 11,000. So that was the reason why that was dropped, because they said it could all be covered under the one item. I don't know if there's been something separate come in, but that's something I think we're gonna have to work on going forward, because I don't know what it's gonna be yet until we hear from Mr. Catwick.
Maintenance may not be your main driving issue
Yeah.
in fiscal '22.
Yep, okay.
The 16th, which is earlier in the week, I received 2 documents from cemetery trustees. They're looking to hire a cemetery sexton. It would be a contracted services. I took home the documents that they sent me and I marked them up. This is going to be a compensated position, and compensation was not part of any of the documents that they sent me. So, the message is this: John Catwick has done a tremendous job and given a tremendous service to the town for the last 15, 20 years. He can no longer perform those services, and the cemetery trustees themselves, as a group, cannot fill his shoes, basically. And so we've come to they're gonna be asking the town, or through the process, can they advertise for a sexton for the cemetery? And can it be compensated, and if so, at what rate? And so this line, we could talk to about it in depth today, but guess what?
Not gonna have the answers.
It's probably gonna, and I don't think it's one of those things that you can avoid. It's one of those things that I think, you know, and I don't know where this discussion goes, does it become part of the default or doesn't it? You know, maybe you tell me that, hey, it's gonna be a warrant article so that people can decide to add a sexton, but that's where this is going.
Yeah.
And if the voters decide not to hire somebody as a sexton, I don't think it's something that can be avoided. Currently, it's another task that Julius and I have taken on, meaning that somebody's called, said, hey, where's so-and-so buried? We've just, in the last 2 weeks, calls come in, wanna know if there's any available plots in the cemetery that their grandparents have picked out. I can't answer it. Julius can't answer it. We refer it on to 2 other individuals. Between the 2 of them, they're figuring it out, calling back those people, meeting with those people. So when they call, when the cemetery trustees asked us to help them bridge this issue, while we can be the, receive the phone calls, because they might come in during the day, or receive an email, Julius and I are not equipped at all to physically handle this. And so, that's where this is going.
Obviously, we're not gonna have any answers for a little bit.
Do they have like a revolving fund for any of the services provided?
They do.
Yes.
They, you know, they have accounts, they have a
Okay.
revolving
They have
fund.
perpetual care, I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larry's back there waving.
And this may be something where there's an appropriation in the budget but a reimbursement from a fund,
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Larry?
That perpetual care is specifically restricted to the monies which were left for the perpetual care of a specific gravesite. One of the nice things that has been done on the operation of the trustees presently is you no longer buy a plot, you buy a right of interment. And every municipality is required by state statute to have a public cemetery. And by a chain of thought from that, you're required then to have the services which are for a public cemetery. So as Chris said, you're not going to get out from under it. 15 years ago, when I came on board as chair, Betty White was still there, and we had the most amiable handshake with a guy whose name I've forgotten from DPW, who worked with John as the assistant sexton. And that was when we had Prospect Hill, and we're servicing it regularly up in Maine, which is another dead chapter. But yeah, you are required to have the services for the proper care of the deceased of the community.
Again, I think what we need to do, obviously, we can't solve anything here. So the idea is we know that this is gonna be in flux. We will do the best we can here in the next, hopefully, the next month or two to get some additional answers, so. Moving on from the cemetery, the next thing up would be planning and code.
Julius couldn't be, had other obligations today, he's trying to find a house to live in, so that took precedent over this today, and I told him that I could cover. Again, let's see. There is an increase in the planning board clerk's salary full-time. Part of that is the 2% adjustment. Part of that is also reflective of the actual duties that the land use clerk is doing. I think you've heard in other instances at the selectmen's meetings and things of that nature that he is carrying a number of other duties. So sadly, those other duties are reflective in this line, although they stem from, he handles banking, he handles, meaning he takes in deposits, he handles building permits, he's handled assessing admirably, while Kathy's not been able to fulfill those duties, meaning sick days, things of that nature. So this is a job that he's taken on, and also he does cover for me when I'm not here. We are a lucky community to have Julius, given the skill set that he brings to the job, and his ability to fulfill the job, how he carries himself. So that's why you'll see the compensation changes in that line.
Chris, I just want to say, I had to call Julius about something. Professional, got back to me, looked up the information, had the information. I mean, I have to say I was very, very, very impressed. It said another couple of verys. So, seriously.
Okay.
Just, yep. When somebody deserves the praise,
Yep.
I'm glad that we're doing something good for them.
The planning board clerk overtime line, again, it's a market increase. It was 2,000 in the default line, it was 3,000 in the operating line. I'm asking for 4. Again, when we've had Julius attend a number of selectmen's meetings, and he's been even trying to fulfill some of this bridge with the cemetery in their state of flux, given the amount of zoning hearings, planning board, and other land use, meetings, that's why that line is up.
That default line can go to what was approved last year.
Okay.
So,
All right. You can go to
3,062.
62, okay. Planning board, his salary for part-time, that would be the CE, Code Enforcement Office Building Inspector, line. Again, Brian was kept in the grade and step plan. He got the 2% that everybody else did. You can see that added, I think, whopping, well, he went from 28,801 to 28,880, so he gets $79 more this year.
I do have a question on the next line, which hadn't been used. Is that a typo, $58?
It appears to be, because I don't, yeah.
Okay. I just highlighted it here, figuring it wasn't going to be one that we've
With my
done.
color blindness, it doesn't even, it barely showed up, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, Social Security, Medicare, I'm gonna try and move quickly on some of this, because I realize the time.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Things that haven't really changed, I'm gonna try to avoid.
Yep.
Contracted services, again, there's a breakdown in that, so it's the same as 28,880 as prior years. Professional services, I am adding in, under professional services, Stratford Regional Planning. I know it was voted on in prior years. I am adding that back in because we are relying on them more and more. Right now, what's happening, and I can't stress this enough, is we don't have a seat at the table. When the improvements through the 10-year plan are approved through the Stratford Regional Planning, us not having or paying these dues and thus having a seat at the table, we are missing out on a huge opportunity of seeing those revenues come back to the town. I can tell you, when I had a seat at the Rockingham County TAC group, and just that subset committee alone decided on who got money and who didn't get money, where projects were put on the 10-year plan or taken off the 10-year plan. There were major $200,000, $300,000 sidewalk improvement grants, because if you didn't have a seat on the table, you didn't get to see your community included. We, as a community, don't realize what we're losing by not being at the table.
The town would be 10 times fold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
And-
could have gained back 50,000 last year in opportunity costs for this 5,000. You don't know what you missed. But I can tell you, other communities are getting that aid because they're sitting at the table. That's why it's in my budget.
Larry, comment?
Same church, slightly different pew. Bruce has done yeoman's work sitting on the Transportation Advisory Committee. Even so, not being a fly on the wall, I have a dark suspicion that he does not get all the access to information and process that we might have if we were paying more into the kitty.
Yep. Nope, absolutely.
For instance, this year they're offering scanning services for free to their members. That
Yeah.
is easily a $20,000 benefit. That stack of paper that has been in the corner that we talked about moving, all needs to be scanned.
Computerized, absolutely.
They could be doing that.
Yep.
So, just
No,
to give you
makes-
for instance. I'll move down, copies, and printing copies the same, supplies the same, postage the same. Again, I think on this particular line, when I look at postage, it has to stay in there because when they send out planning board and zoning board notices, that line can get crazy. Equipment maintenance, again, it's the same, mileage traveled the same, all the other lines, I'm looking down through here. Public notices, I put in as $1, we still have to do them.
Yeah, they did that because it says it gets reimbursed,
It
but,
does get reimbursed,
yeah.
exactly.
So leaving, and I'll tell you, leaving the default number up there made sense because you can see that they've got a cost overrun at this point. Quick question, Chris, you had, we had equipment purchased last year of $150 for the default and it's just 0. Is that supposed to be 0? At a minimum, it should be $1. I should,
Yeah, probably should put it in as $1.
okay. Yeah, you don't wanna lose the line item.
Yep.
All right, any questions on planning and code?
Chairman,
Yes.
you know there's an issue, and I think I mentioned it, this is not the time to do it, but the number in the columns, I'm telling you, one instant is not right.
Yep.
I don't wanna bring it up now, I sent you a copy of.
Yeah, we'll go over that at our regular meeting on
Go
the,
over it with Chris or
I will
at
go
our
over-
meeting as well, but
yep,
there are 3 items that are not the same.
cost-wise, they're not, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what they are.
Yep, there was encumbrance versus a few, yes.
Yeah,
I
they've
know
been
what you're doing.
changed. So
Yep.
last month, they were
Yep.
fine. This month, you can tell you got a bookkeeper.
Yep.
It's some of the numbers, how did they get to it? Because
Mm-hmm.
this is the meeting minutes of December 28th, 2020.
Yep.
And that's where this stuff came from now.
No, we'll definitely bring that
Okay, I
up.
just want to bring it up because these columns should be changed, or they may be okay the way they are, but just because of this meeting minutes, that's what's throwing some of this off, because I found the numbers from there.
Okay, no,
Okay? I'll
absolutely.
give that to Chris if he wants to see it.
Yeah, that's fine.
He wasn't here.
Yeah, if you give it to him, that'd be good, and then we can go over those.
Thank you.
Yep,
It's
all right.
just numerical error, so
Yep.
page 2.
Okay.
Did you have a comment,
Thank
Peg?
you.
Yeah, I just have a question. The GIS data sets and maps.
Oh, we haven't gotten to them yet. We haven't even, I just asked if there were still questions on the planning and code.
Well, that is
That's
planning
planning,
code.
no, that's planning board.
Oh, duh, sorry.
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
we haven't quite got there.
I
But
just
that's
said
okay,
planning.
you're in anticipation.
So
So
before we
if
get
there's no other, if
started.
there's no other questions on the planning and code, we will move on to the planning board, so.
Okay, that.
You
kind
can
of-
ask well, I do know that the only thing that has changed on this was a reduction on the public notices piece. And actually, there's no change in the budget from last year.
Yeah.
But
no.
if you want to ask your question on the map, that's,
Okay, there's $500, but isn't there always a warrant article to add money? I mean, it seems to me that I just always remember seeing something with a warrant article to buy
This-
more maps, to do more stuff.
yeah, this is the maintenance piece. And if they go after any additional things, they
Okay,
put it under
all
a
right.
warrant article. Yep.
Okay,
Yes,
good,
yes.
then maybe it should be called
Yeah.
maintenance.
And you could, but that's what this has traditionally been used at, is
Okay.
just the ongoing maintenance for the current maps. So,
Okay.
in other words, the updates they do.
Right, no,
Yeah.
that's,
So,
that's fine, I just, two different things,
I'm
what
all
were you
set.
doing this one for?
okay, if there's no other questions, the next one's zoning board, and we can see that there is no change from last year's, so. Conservation Commission, I know you had a change, Chris, if you want to just talk about they lowered their legal defense, that was
Right.
the extent of it, and I don't know of any other change on there. Although they did, my question is why they want $400 for miscellaneous. I don't understand that piece, so that's one that I think we have to go back and just ask. They must have some reason. They've spent no money
Mm.
ever, so kind of a,
Right, I would agree.
okay. All right, I know there was no change in the emergency management. All right, next up is outside appropriations. There have been some adjustments. I don't know.
I don't, it did carry to these copies, color copies that I give you today, but I'm
Yep.
not sure, and it would have been on the, so, on the outside appropriations, I have received 4 of the letters. We Care Food Pantry, Wakefield Food Pantry, Cornerstone DNA. There was one other, I believe, that I received. Oh, and the American Red Cross is apparently a new request or a new request.
That actually got identified as one from a year ago. It just,
Right.
we never, what happened on that, if you notice, the line item does not
Mhm.
have its own.
Yep.
We put in it, we don't have a line item for it, that was all.
Okay. Pretty much if I didn't have any different requests, in writing, I didn't put in anything different, I don't believe. Although I see the Wakefield resource, well, they were in default at 500 and 1,000, I've got them in as at 500. So, I can't really speak for any individual group, but I did try and just carry those numbers, as they say, forward.
The only one that I think is in question was the Stratford cap,
Mhm.
because the 4,000's what it did change to last year.
Right.
And I don't know if you've gotten anything specific that would raise it to 5. That's, I know you don't necessarily have an
haven't.
answer, so.
But I can tell you, as your acting welfare director, that is a most
I
active
understand what it's for.
carrier
Yep.
of the community.
Yep.
Due to the COVID restrictions being lifted,
Mhm.
now if someone wants to claim a COVID exemption for, in other words, not to be evicted, they literally have to get on the Center for Disease Control site and fill out a form which gives them an affidavit that they can then provide. To be honest with you, that's problematic because a lot of these people that I'm dealing with either have small computer skills or they're so tight that they don't even have a computer or an internet service. So we've literally had to help them here with our town computers fill out and make application. So-
And I think-
My comment to that would have been, we had 7250 in there.
Right.
And it could still carry over,
the
because
same
I know
time,
we
they
went
have a-
through this last year
Right.
trying to figure this piece out. This was
Right.
an argument, and I will say it with Ernie, going, you're taking money out of outside appropriations to try to cover something, but the reality is, whether you want to cover it or not, it will come back to that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Now,
And they
thank
still
you for
have $1
keeping
million
these.
that
Yeah.
they're trying
Right.
countywide to
Right.
disperse,
so that actually could, the default could actually be up.
Yeah, I could reach out to them, but
Yeah.
as yet I have not.
Okay. I
Well,
don't,
and this is so preliminary right now.
Yeah, it
I
is.
mean,
That
the
piece of
Board-
it, right.
The Board of Selectmen, we
haven't talked
normally.
to this number yet.
We haven't
right?
even gone through
Nope.
any of this, and we'll talk about outside appropriations,
And I'm
so.
glad you said that, because in my,
Exactly.
always try to do a bang-up job the first time out of the gate, but
And you
I
have.
just realized about a month ago, I don't know what I don't know, and there's
Mm-hmm.
certain of these items that are outside of my control, and that
Yep.
frustrates me as an individual to produce a document that's.
No. And like I said, I just wanted to highlight it, because
Yeah,
it's just one that
okay.
I know that, and that's the reason why going forward, we need to be communicating with both groups, so.
Right.
All right, moving on to welfare.
So, only $1 for salaries. Training, admittedly, 240, I think I just rounded it, put to 250 this year. Because Julius and I don't know what we don't know, we've been on the fly.
Yep.
We have attended some Zoom meetings, learned a lot.
Yep.
The best one that we attended, they said, welfare is an art, and that is an understatement. Even though there's guidance documents, it's still an art.
Mhm.
So contract services that would have been Terry from this year is now down to $30 from 6,500. I don't anticipate that changing with Julius and I and Brittany here in the one item that I think you want to see that I didn't change, or I did change, is final expenses. It had been 0. I would say to you, you really can't and shouldn't do that.
We did talk to that
I
last
went
week.
and compiled the last 3 years of welfare records, and you have paid out, basically for cremation services every single year for the last 3 years. I already had one request this year, and so that you will see that line, you go, wow, where did, I believe, and I had this discussion with Humphrey when I first got here, I believe in truth in spending, like banks believe in truth in lending. In other words, that's why I'm not fond of miscellaneous lines, and if in fact you do pay for a final expense, I believe you should put it in there.
Yep.
And that's why that line is up big time.
I just want to say, I mean, since I became selectman 7 years ago, the welfare every year has been getting hit. This year, it's been hit hard. And the town is bound and obligated, okay? And for me, and like I said, this is still very preliminary. We haven't even, the select board hasn't even talked about it. And we will talk about it. But I have a problem with the welfare budget. You can continue on with it, but when we'll talk. But I just.
Well, and thank you for that segue, Andy, because as a non-welfare person before, again, I'm compiling 19, 20, and 21's cases. I was surprised to see that in 19, the expenditure in the whole department was only around 15,000.
Mm-hmm.
I was then further surprised to see that in 2020, it dropped to 12. I know as of a couple weeks ago, it was at the 12 to 1,300 range. I wasn't alarmed by that because 1,400 of it, I had actually reverted back, directed away from paying somebody's rent to paying that landlord's taxes. So we are on track on or about the same amount as in 2020.
And don't get me wrong, you're doing a great job.
No, and the reason why I'm amazed is given the
Current state of
current
affairs.
state of, thank you, I was gonna say the economic situation. I'm, as a resident, as a taxpayer, amazed. I would have thought, not knowing what I didn't know, that the number would have been much, much higher in 19, and that 20 would have been wide open, and that I'm just amazed that I've been able to keep the number in check here in 21.
Well, I think the reason is because of the carryover of additional funding that people have received, but now that moratorium on rent and the reduction to go back to regular unemployment, I think you're gonna see a spike coming
And the
in the
bigger
near
spike is
future.
not due to either one of those reasons. The bigger spike is due to real estate prices increasing dramatically.
Oh, that too.
All the building owners are looking to flip their rental buildings.
Yep.
Are looking to flip their buildings, and they're evicting their tenants left and right so that they can have the time to do interior renovations, painting, before they remarket the buildings.
Yep.
So, that's why I'm amazed it's only where it's at present.
But definitely one we need to focus some attention
Yes.
on
Yeah.
here going forward.
Yep.
Peg?
Yeah, Andy kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I have a real hard time. No, I don't need assistance, but I just feel as though, I don't know, there are so many people who do need assistance. I've dropped into the food pantry a couple times just to give them a check or give them something. And it just blows my mind, the number of people that they have going through there. I don't know. I mean, I don't like to see anything, and as Andy said, we are obligated. So if, Mary and Joe come in and they request money, we have to pay it,
Yeah,
whether it's in the budget or not.
yep.
Well,
So I would rather go with the default and have it there, and if we don't spend it, wonderful. I mean, I think that's great if we don't spend it, but I would rather see it there to take care of people in need in this town.
I think coming back to Chris's original comment on Stratford Cap,
Yeah.
that helps offset a lot of what's here, and
Yeah.
that's the reason why that is critical.
Right.
Well,
Larry, hold
me,
on one
Lash,
second,
oh,
Larry.
I'm sorry.
Larry, you had a comment? Yeah, I just,
Yeah, if memory serves, the town has done wonderfully taking control of its own expenses.
Mhm.
Because I sincerely believe that I remember the contract figure $118,000 when I first came on the planning board.
yeah.
I'm sorry, wrong hat, budget committee.
It's not like you've been on only one committee, so we know that.
Forever and
No,
ever.
and
Yeah.
I'm on the same boat as Peg. I mean, we should be prepared.
Yep.
Okay, and that's all I'm saying is we should be prepared because it is our obligation. And if it's not there, we got to find it somewhere. And I just want to be prepared. That's all.
Yeah.
And there's
And-
nothing wrong with
yeah.
being prepared. I'd love to put it back to the general fund if we don't use
Yeah,
it, and that's
yeah.
great.
Yep.
But just.
Well, if the budget committee remembers last year, me crying, screaming, I don't even know what I did, but regarding all of the outside appropriations being basically zeroed out, and, we're gonna do it in a warrant article, and it's like, no, 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 no. So, I mean, I'm glad that there is money there, because I still say we need to take care of our people.
Yep.
Sorry.
And we're gonna talk about this. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have to be out of here in 15 minutes.
And we should be able to finish this up.
But I got one thing, and I want Chris to think about this. Under the contracted services where we hired out the 6,500, I honestly do not believe that our salary finance director should be that should be one of her duties. Only because of there has been so many mistakes in the past years, all right, that have cost this town so much money, being shorthanded in help. And I think moving forward, that's just a duty that should be left in welfare. And it shouldn't be, another duty somebody else should try to take care of. I mean, we're so short-staffed in this building that Julie is wearing 6, 7, 8 hats, and I just think moving forward, if we're going to do this and do it right, that the finance person should have nothing to do with welfare, and we'll talk about that moving forward. But just something, a food for thought.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Let's,
And of course, this is the board of selectmen. Have to. This isn't just me. I mean, it'll
No,
go through
it's
the whole
done-
board, and So I just.
Absolutely.
But that's just something that I was thinking about sitting here.
Okay.
So.
So noted.
Okay. Thanks.
all right, thank you. We're gonna, the next thing up is economic development. I know that's been reduced, and I know that I don't even know where we stand right now. That one's in flux till we figure out what's happening with the Economic Development Committee, but nothing has ever been spent along the lines of what was requested. Peg and I were both there on that board. I think the $1,000 that's in there is more than sufficient to cover everything, and we don't need all the individual lines.
I agree.
That's my personal comment, but that's one going forward for you guys, and that $500 miscellaneous does not make sense either, so.
No, I agree.
All right, debt service, principal, and interest, not a topic at this point. We know that is what it is, as we put it. So the last thing up is the sanitary sewer, and I just want to touch basis on, this is the one that I know I mentioned earlier when we were talking a little bit about the cemetery, and we have talked extensively well, since I've been on the budget committee, and I've seen it in other towns as well, this is always offset by the bill.
Yep.
So when we see the increases, I'd like to understand what the increases are. We don't have those, you know, especially when we've gone back and forth on this miscellaneous part, Chris. I don't know if you've got something, but we've gone a bunch, 12,000, we've gone $1, we're up to 2, but whatever the figure comes in, as Dale goes and works on this with you, and obviously with the select board, I believe the default should be matching the cost. We shouldn't be showing the sewer costing more money than what it's getting for revenue in the long run.
Yeah.
Agreed.
No, and I agree, and Chris and I, we've talked about this, we've hired, well, the sewer, we've hired Pearson Wright, they're doing a big study.
Yep.
There's things are gonna be changing down there, so I think in the future, you know, after these studies get done and people are paying, you know, what they should be paying, unfortunately, I think moving forward, this budget will reflect to what it makes.
Yeah, I just think and I know Larry's got a comment because I've been part of this, just before we get into the actual thing, but Larry, and I have you touch on that.
What I would like is some more detail
Yeah.
on the condition of the lagoon liner. Just for the general public's information, the additional cost of treating the wastewater, as we no longer may be able to get away with potash.
Yep.
And where we stand for what Farmington has been able to do to disassociate itself from the Salmon Falls watershed, even though the Pacheco goes down. And where we stand, I forget the acronym, MS4?
MS4, yep.
Yeah, the MS4, just so people know they're not being gouged for their rates and the town is proactive.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I know, Chris, I don't know what you can or can't address on this right now. I don't know what's been brought up, but I agree with the details. I do want to just say, before, not to beat a dead horse, but under the miscellaneous, because like Larry said, there are a lot of things in there in dealing with the lagoon and all that could be its own line item on here. I mean, Dale knows, he speaks fluently about what it is. It's like, then why aren't we covering that as a piece of this? It kind of gets shuffled. I just think it would make a lot more sense for when we go to see this, that to actually have charges and everything else showing where they're really being used, instead of 12,976 under miscellaneous last year, and you go, what was that? You know, you have to go look at every cost. So Chris, do you have something specific? I don't know if you do or don't on this one.
Well, great progress is being made in that they have a new monitoring well that got drilled.
Yep.
The town Board of Selectmen did approve the contract with Wright Pierce to get that done and oversee it. When you see things like permits and testing going from 8,000 to 1,450, it's because now that you have the new monitoring well, you're actually going to have to test the water that, and the reason why they put it in. And those tests, more so, it's not so much additional labor costs, it's additional testing costs to do that. Very proactive, if you will, with respect to defining how much liner needs to be repaired. The big question now is whether to do the 80% patch or just the whole thing on the left, on that northeast side, because it's just one particular section of the liner. They have requested state revolving loan money for that, and also Julius and I did include the monies that they need for the facility study and portion of the landfill or the liner costs as part of the ARPA money, the ARPA, APRA, however, too many acronyms federally. So that was included in the $480,000 we're expecting from them. It is up to the board to decide whether to allocate those resources to those particular items, but those are there. So, very active on a number of fronts to control and contain these services and stay on top of them. There are some decisions that have to be made. And I'm not in disagreement at all with the chair's comments that maybe additional lines or additional flushing out of these particular budget lines would be more in keeping with the full disclosure of where their costs actually are.
Yeah.
Do not agree, disagree at all.
So, anything that, any expense from the sewer, whatever, I'm on the sewer, I get an increase. So, I mean, I know we went through this last
Yeah.
year, but it's 100% the sewer company spends $100,000. That gets divvied up and they receive $100,000 from all of the people on the sewer system.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with what you said then, Humphrey. Whatever the default should equal the proposed, so that we are not over the default with something that is going to be repaid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I think that kind of rolls up because at the top of this document, as when we created this, it was the total without the sewer and the total with the sewer because it was showing the differences. But the reality is, there's only one total, and that's the total budget, which includes the sewer. You know, so we just need to make sure that we kind of address that.
And I did the opposite with the email to you last night after looking at this, didn't I?
It's okay, Bob. You have a
One
comment?
comment on this. This could be coming out of the revolving fund. They have a huge amount in that revolving fund.
Yep.
Why it's here, I don't know, but maybe they have to put it here, but.
Well, that's kind of why I'd like to see more of a breakdown so we have a better understanding of what it is that this is
Okay.
paying for. Yeah.
If it comes out of the revolving fund, I just don't know why it goes here.
Right.
Because it's part of it's gonna involve their budget, it's gonna spring it up, and then that's less money, it's gonna really attack it, but if we had that revolving fund, we could see money coming in and money going out. The only thing you won't see is what's it for,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a way of getting it. Joanne could do it, she could show all revolving funds, money coming in, money going out, you see what you got now and the balance brought forward. And you will get the detail, I believe you will get the deal of what was there, what was it used for. We could get this. And I
Yep.
think at the next meeting, I'm gonna ask for it.
Yeah, not just the MS9 report, but the total information, right?
Well, the revolving fund is a different issue.
No, that's what I'm saying. You want you want both pieces. The
Yeah.
MS9, which gives us that, plus the details on the spend.
The MS,
no, that's fine.
The last 3 pages, you don't need the cemetery.
Oh, no, I agree, because that's all the perpetual care. Larry?
That, for the point Bob was bringing up, the revolving fund for current expenses that go in and out, and the capital reserve fund against the replacement cost for the entire system.
Yep.
And those are
Two separate things, right. All right, that was the last of what we have here, and we did pretty good, actually, time-wise, but anything else pressing?
No, thank you, Chris.
I thank you, everybody, for your time. At this point in time, because
I'll
I'll
make a
close it out
motion to
last.
adjourn.
Well, I'm gonna let them do theirs first.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and Peg, you wanna make a motion
I'll
to
make a
adjourn the
motion
budget
for the
committee?
budget committee to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
forgot
So,
you guys.
thank you, everybody. Amy, thank you for doing what you can do out of that.
Sure was very exciting for you.
motion to thank Amy.
Thanks, Andy. Take care. Oh.